With clouds above and rain in the air, tension is building up for the start of the 79th ever Grand Prix in Monaco in a pretty amazing way. Welcome to our coverage on F1 Live as we prepare for what could be one of the most unpredictable races at this venue. Things are certainly warming up, but only in terms of tension, because it is cooling down, it is getting damp. And for the 78 laps around here, choosing the correct tyres, not sliding off on a slippery surface, is going to be one of the most challenging aspects for all the 20 drivers who are on the grid. Officially, low grip conditions have just been announced by the stewards, and that means they can run the intermediates or wets if they want to. Well, we've seen plenty of battles here over the last few years. Vettel just managing to beat Pierre Gasly in the points last year. We saw one pass in last year's race. That was Mick Schumacher getting past his teammate Nikita Mazepin, but overtaking, as we know, is tricky. Mind you, in the wet conditions, there are sometimes more opportunities. Those are the slicks, but we may well be seeing the wets, the intermediates coming into play. The soft tyre, definitely the one that was used in qualifying, but we are expecting to see a different tyre, that's for sure, for the start of the Grand Prix. So let's take a look at the lineup on the grid. At the back we have Zhou Guanyu and Nicholas Latifi, a hat-trick of back rows for Latifi. Lance Stroll, he's been 3 times 17th on the grid, he's 18th, and Pierre Gasly, one of the big losers in qualifying. Alex Albon 16th, Mick Schumacher lining up in 15th place for the 3rd time this year. And then it's Daniel Ricciardo, 3rd time that he's been 14th on the grid this year as well. Kevin Magnussen is 13th for Haas. Valtteri Bottas, he's missed the top 10, he's 12th. Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, 11th. Esteban Ocon did make the top 10 for Alpine. Sebastian Vettel, former winner here of course, he starts 9th with a bunch of champions around him. Lewis Hamilton in 8th place and Fernando Alonso in 7th. They've all had battles here at Monaco in the past. George Russell is 6th with Lando Norris in 5th place, the 2 Brits on the 3rd row of the grid. Then on the 2nd row, it's an all Red Bull 2nd row with Sergio Perez in 3rd, Max Verstappen in 4th place. But up front, we have Carlos Sainz in 2nd and Charles Leclerc on pole position. An all Ferrari front row to the grid, but in conditions that are going to make life pretty difficult. You can see the water splashing onto the screens, and we have heard that the start procedure has been suspended. And Sam, this is presumably to give them a bit of more opportunity to make a decision on tyres.
Yeah, absolutely. The regulations say that wheels and tyres must be fitted to the cars with the 5-minute signal. That has not happened because the change of climatic conditions message went to the teams at 56, so they weren't able to make that change. With the change of climatic conditions message, the teams are also allowed to change brake ducting and some bodywork panels, and it'd be interesting to see any teams taking advantage to do that. So let's hear from the Alfa Romeo team on that.
There is heavy rain coming the next couple of minutes.
Let's bring Alan McNish in on this, former Grand Prix driver, raced here for Toyota at Monaco, multiple winner at Le Mans. Alan, this is just so unpredictable now. This is really heating things up, isn't it?
It's like being at the casino. You're actually gambling a little bit at this moment in time. I think, though, with the fact it's been delayed, it means that everybody will go into that intermediate tyre. And so from Charles Leclerc's point of view, he was the one that was standing out there just rubbing his foot onto the ground to see what the surface was like, what the grip was like, because they've not had any rain here over the weekend, and this is a resurfaced track as well. So this is going to be a bit of a voyage into the unknown, especially into Saint-Devote in that first lap.
That's a very good point, isn't it, Sam?
Well, absolutely. Looking at the tyre data that we've got from the teams at the moment, every single team has adopted the intermediate tyre. However, looking at the weather radar, that message from Alfa Romeo was absolutely spot on. There is some very heavy rain that has just boiled up between Nice and Cannes along the coast, and if that works its way into Monaco, the intermediate tyre may not be the tyre to start on. Could we see a situation like Markus Winkelhock at the Nürburgring opting to start on the wet tyre late and almost dominating the race? The race, we've just been told, is going to start behind the safety car.
Okay, well, at least they will get a chance to understand the grip levels if they're starting behind the safety car. And, of course, what that also does, Alan, if they're starting the formation lap, if the formation lap started behind the safety car, if they don't bring them onto the grid for a start, which is fairly unusual nowadays, of course, then it does sort of set the pattern, the order, much more straightforward going into the race. Let's just listen to Perez.
Yeah, Checo, so expect rain a few laps into the race, 3 or 4 laps into the race.
So more rain expected, Alan.
Yeah, certainly is. I think what they're doing is they're just basically allowing this, because normally you've got the regulation where you can follow the safety car and then re-grid and go again. However, in Monaco, that would create, I would say, a high risk of an accident at the first corner. So therefore, they're going to have a safety car restart. It'll be basically line astern in that respect. But with this level of rain that could be coming in right now, and I see there's umbrellas just out in front of me going back up, then I think it's going to be pretty tricky conditions for those first few laps. As you mentioned earlier on, Sam, Fernando Alonso, he's very good at starts and he's very good in these conditions.
Alan, just thinking about the surface, the track surface that we've got here, and the rubber that's gone down over the course of the weekend, what's going to work in terms of your lines through the corners? Are you going to want to be offline to find more grip if it's damp like this, or not really?
You can't really be too far offline, Ben, you know, because there's not actually that much circuit to be offline. I mean, you've got barriers and walls. What you're probably going to be doing is trying to brake very much in a straight line, so you've got equal load on your front tyres especially, and then to maybe turn in and apex a little bit later so that you're accelerating with more equal loading on your rear tyres for better traction up the hill. However, you will be also braking into Saint-Devote, where they've been just using that yellow line, which is the separation to the pit lane. That's the point of braking for the right front. I think you'll want to try to keep off those type of situations.
Yes, the curbs as well, presumably, are going to be a little bit greasy and slippery. So we shall see how that pans out. So the teams now having to make these decisions, rushing around to get the correct tyres, the correct wheels to the cars. So there's a lot of work going on for the mechanics, as you can see, a lot of rushing around. And remember, these are bigger wheels this year, Sam. They're actually heavier too, aren't they? And we've seen in pit stops and stuff, sometimes these heavier wheels have caused more delays.
They are substantially bigger, they are substantially heavier, and those wheel covers are very susceptible to damage on the barriers if they're driving. Just clipped it too tight. We've seen Pierre Gasly do it a couple of times, I think, and that could create a bit of debris on the track, which in itself could bring out the safety car. And just talking about the safety car procedure, there are some details for you on that.
Okay, we'll come to that in a second. I was just looking at the formation lap starting at 15:09, so what, they've only got a little time left to put these tyres on the cars, and they are rushing around, these teams. Some might not get their tyres to the cars in time.
Yeah, they have to have their wheels, and as I said earlier, they have to have their wheels and tyres fully bolted onto the cars with 5 minutes to go before the rollout. So they're really running out of time right now on it.
So basically, it's going to be formation lap behind safety car, so that means X-wets to start.
So the news is still developing, so we've just been told that the start has now been delayed again, so it won't start at 15:09 as it said on the screen.
But that was interesting, because he's been told, because we're starting behind safety car, the rule is you have to start on extreme wets, don't you? So that's what he just said. You could see the little shake of the head from Lewis Hamilton, because did you really want to be starting on extreme wets?
Well, I think the FIA are looking at the weather radar and seeing what's going to come.
Okay.
Actually, I think I feel a little bit disappointed by that, because I wanted to see the teams getting it wrong and then having to react. Now, this is important, once the race gets underway, or the formation lap gets underway behind the safety car, the race director, Eduardo Freitas, has the choice of a rolling start or a standing start, and he will confirm that only once the cars have taken to the track. So it's not clear which type of start we're going to get.
Further delayed start, Max.
What are we waiting for? For it to dry, or?
This is an interesting one. And Alan, the race director, Eduardo Freitas, you've worked with over the years, both as a racing driver yourself. He's been in charge of a lot of the races you've done over the years. What do you think is going through his mind at the moment?
Well, Eduardo was actually a marshal, and then he came through the various different ranks, and see, he's been the race director of the Le Mans 24 Hours and the World Endurance Championship for many, many years. So I've known him as a driver and also as part of the team as well. And what I've found with him is he's very, very clear, very straightforward, but he makes very clear decisions, especially in situations like this. He knows that the race is 2 hours. It's not just the race to Saint-Devote. And so in that particular point that Sam was talking about, with it possibly being a standing start or a rolling start, he preferred just to make sure that everybody can race in the game, and also very much taking into account the weather forecasting and radio information that they are getting, which is trying to maybe expect what will be here in 4 or 5 minutes' time.
Now, this message delayed start that you can see on your screen has a regulatory purpose. That means the start procedures can be completely delayed. The teams can then take the wheels and tyres off the cars again and make a decision a little bit later. It's actually a little bit of a 10-minute signal. So the start procedure will not start again for another 10 minutes, which has just been confirmed that the formation lap will start at 15:16. Unless we see that message again.
So 10 minutes. But Alan, you're saying that the rain's coming down a little bit more now as well. We are seeing a little patter of rain out on the track. This is going to be a real challenge at the start, isn't it?
It's more than a patter, to be honest with you, because now all the grandstand in front of me, everybody's actually pushing back underneath the cover, and anybody at the front is getting drenched. There's umbrellas going up, there's pack-a-macs going on, and so we're the one person on the grid that I think definitely wants to get this going is Max Verstappen. You could hear from his point, why aren't we going? I think the person that'll be quiet about it is actually Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. They want to make sure they know that they're in the right position at the right time.
I was just thinking, Sam, that with him having this, never having finished here at Monaco in a Grand Prix, and now he's got to cope with this, if he's pole man and he gets the start, but he's the first to experience the track conditions. He's the first into each corner. Sometimes it's better to be behind to see, there's a drama, I'm going to slow down a bit.
Well, exactly, and there's a little mistake here puts you in the barriers. We've seen it before. Now, what's going on with the rain pouring down? The teams now have to make a decision on what tyres to start on by 15:11. I have to say, though, I'm a little disappointed, because how much fun would this have been if we'd started on schedule and the teams would all have to dive into the pits and make that decision?
Said clearly by a man that's never actually sat in one of these cars, diving into the first corner, trying to make it through there and up the hill.
So this intensity will be like this for 10 minutes and then lighter for another 3 minutes.
Wow, this has certainly changed things. It's certainly... Sorry, just to bump over the top of that, but certainly the extreme wets are the ones to go for. They'll have to, presumably, behind the safety car. But then, if the rain doesn't last for too long, we could be in for some very interesting strategies.
Well, this is going to be crucial, because looking at the radar now, it's becoming quite clear that, yes, it leads off for about 3 minutes, but what that radio message didn't say is what happens after 3 minutes. Well, more rain is going to come, but it could just go to the north of Monaco and miss it, or it could hit the circuit, and it's a little bit uncertain. If a team rolls the dice to come in early for the intermediates and get that pace advantage, sure, that's good, but then it could go wrong and you get more rain and you're on the wrong tyres and you're out of contention altogether for the Grand Prix. However, a pit stop at Monaco is such a big penalty that they're all going to try and stay out for as long as possible, but at some point the wets will not be able to cope with the rapidly drying track.
We've had some remarkable wet races in the past at Monaco, haven't we, Alan? I remember that 2008 race that Lewis actually won from third on the grid. He actually hit the barrier at Tabac on lap 6, but then came back from that and took a remarkable victory.
Yeah, certainly, and also Olivier Panis when he won here, and he was, mid to back of the grid, but took exactly that point that we're talking about with an early change of tyres and got himself track position, and then was able to take the victory. In fact, his only victory. So it can throw up these roll of the dice opportunities. You've got to have the bravery to be able to take it when it presents itself, but you've also got to be able to as well realise that you've got a no-lose situation. If you're at the front, then I don't think you can take these risks quite as much.
Well, the regulations are quite interesting here. If the rain, I don't think the rain is going to continue all the way through the race. However, it probably does mean people are going to pit quite early for the intermediate tyre, and then they're just going to wear that tyre down. We've seen it in Turkey in 2020, we've seen it in a few other circuits over the years, and they basically wear down to almost a slick intermediate. The tyre loses all of its tread, and they'll just keep going until, and I think it was Esteban Ocon who wore the tyre right down to its canvas, trying to keep it going through the race there, and just finished the race. If it had gone a lap longer, he'd have been in trouble. The tyre wear here at Monaco is extremely low, so that's what I think you're going to see. Essentially a zero-stop race.
Not everybody's got an umbrella, and so all sorts of people are trying to find ways to protect themselves. Many people are well organised, bearing in mind it's been bright and sunny all weekend until this very moment, until the start of the race. And there you can see flags are quite useful sometimes when it's raining, and there is going to be even more excitement as we build up to this Grand Prix. Just confirmation that all the cars will be on the extreme wet tyres. There are some smiles amongst the guys that have had to be rushing around to get these wheels fitted on the cars. Down there it's Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda is starting from 11th place. This is going to be a challenge for him as well, Alan.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's going to be a tough challenge for them all, but certainly in that middle area, you know what it's like, Ben. At the front, you've got the clear vision. In the middle, you've got the spray, but also everybody concertining up, especially on those first laps. And so I think experience in that middle is very, very important. Like Valtteri Bottas there in 12th position, for example, a little bit out of position because we expected him to be further up as well.
Yeah, so there are a few people who could perhaps spring some surprises. Let's listen into the radio again with Leclerc.
Charlie, a question just to be clear. I should know, but anyway. In wet races, do you have one stop is still mandatory? One stop is still mandatory. It's still you have to do one pit stop on a wet race, no?
You don't need to stop. You don't need to stop.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he's just checking the rules there, Alan, that you don't need to stop under a wet race conditions. They change the rules for that, don't they?
Yeah, you don't now. And as I saw Sam nodding his head there and going, no. I think he certainly, a race driver knows the rule book generally. However, in these sort of situations and those pressure moments, sometimes you just need that little bit of comfort from your engineer as well.
I think what's going to define the pit stop strategy here is the track conditions. You can see how wet it is. That is full wet conditions. Look how dry it is in the tunnel.
Yes, I know. That's such a classic shot here, isn't it? The dry bit out of the tunnel and then the wet bit.
And look at this question coming on hashtag F1 Live from Haley. Why was Carlos Sainz allowed to change his gearbox with no penalty? That's because it came from genuine accident damage. That is allowed in the sporting regulations if you change to a transmission with exactly the same specification. The rules have changed for this season. You have a maximum number of gearboxes you can use per year, which is 4 per driver, not including some free practice gearbox. And as long as you change for the same specification transmission, you can make a penalty-free change as a result of accident damage in the qualifying session before the race. So no penalty for him, no penalty for Sergio Perez, who's also changed his gearbox under the same conditions.
And if you have any more questions, hashtag F1 Live, and we will do our best to try and answer them. So join the conversation, hashtag F1 Live. And for the moment, we've got this little delay. Not for long, I have to say. We'll be seeing the cars fire up in a minute or two before they head out behind the safety car. Good view here of the cloud above the hills on this Côte d'Azur, and well, as you can see, a much more grey look than we had yesterday.
I have a hashtag F1 Live question from Charles in Monaco about tyre strategy. He's asking, can you go to the end of the race on the wet tyre? The answer is, regulatory speaking, yes you can. Condition speaking, no you can't. You'll wear them out very, very quickly, and you will have to switch to either a slick or an intermediate before the end of the Grand Prix.
Yes, you'd need constant rain, wouldn't you, to stay on a set of wets, and it's pretty unlikely that we're going to get constant rain throughout.
Yeah, already the umbrellas are going down in front of me, and so I think the rain, certainly the intensity's dropped off quite a lot, and we heard that radio message to Sergio Perez as well, saying it was going to be heavy for a period of time, which is just about now where it's dropping off. But now the track temperature's dropped a lot as well. Here's Lewis Hamilton.
Everyone take some deep breaths, man, and just cool down. And everyone will panicky in this race.
That's an interesting line, isn't it, Alan? That he's telling the team to calm down.
Yeah, but he can hear all of the different conversations that are going on, and you get a feedback of that. And that, I think, that shows why 7 times world champion, being able to actually calm the team down, where inside himself he knows that this is a long race, 78 laps, and a lot's going to happen. And the worst thing you can do is basically have a problem at the start just due to maybe overthinking things, for example.
Sam, the other aspect actually that Alan just mentioned, well, we'll just listen into Leclerc again.
So, standing water, exit of the tunnel. So be careful there when you do the formation laps. Just watch for this.
Yeah, exit of the tunnel is always a tricky one. But I was just thinking also then, will we make 78 laps now that it's going to be wet? I mean, last year we had no safety cars, no red flags, and actually it was the fastest ever race at Monaco. It was under 1 hour 40 minutes. But you do wonder when you get conditions like this, if we may get to the 2-hour limit before we get to 78 laps.
Well, from the moment the race actually officially starts, which it hasn't done, you have 2 hours of running unless we get a red flag. Then it goes to 4 hours, which you saw in Spa last year. I've just been sent a fun fact in from Joanna on hashtag F1 Live, that just pointing out that Daniel Ricciardo is starting from the same position that Olivier Panis won the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix from. Though Daniel Ricciardo is definitely not driving a Ligier.
No, but that's a very good point. And Daniel has always been very good here at Monaco. He's a one-time winner. He should have been a 2-time winner if Red Bull had got the pit stop right. But here we go. This is just the formation lap now behind the safety car. And what you're seeing is all of the cars on extreme wet tyres. It's the full wet tyre to give them as much grip as possible.
Now remember, we are waiting for confirmation from race control whether this will be a standing start or a rolling start. We haven't had that message yet, and that message clearly hasn't gone to the team, so we're still waiting for that confirmation. And I suspect in these conditions we're going to see the message come up, extra formation lap.
Alan, what are your thoughts? You're seeing it from the driver's perspective there.
Yeah, just seeing Charles Leclerc behind the safety car, which is not going very quickly. 2 things are happening. One, you can see a lot of spray already, and the fact the safety car is going quite slow, so his tyre temperatures, when they came out the blankets, would be high. Now they're just cooling down, and they get to a certain temperature, and then they don't work. It's like driving on ice. And so really this slow safety car lap is something that you don't want. You actually want to try to generate tyre temperature, but it just looks like you're tippy-toeing around. I've got to be honest with you, it doesn't look a lot of fun at this moment.
You're happy watching this one rather than being in the car?
Well, I've got to say, you always want to be in the car, but this one I think you can sit there and think, yeah, they're going to be earning the money today.
You can see out of the tunnel and into the spray, there have been some patches of resurfaced areas around this track, and sometimes that can change the amount of spray you get, can't it?
It certainly can, and also the runoff as well, how porous the surface is to actually let the water get in. The one thing that's clear is this new surface is very grippy in the wet, so I think it will have grip, but the speed of the car is also going to be significantly slower. Whichever way, it is going to be difficult, and with the stiffly sprung cars that they ran in qualifying yesterday, any little bump or any sort of area curve, for example, if they hit it, then it's going to be very easy to lose that grip.
So let's just watch them as they come around on this formation lap. You get a bit of an idea as they accelerate out of this last little sequence as to how much water is down there. You can see the rain is still pounding down, so we are in for wet time for a while, so they can continue the formation laps for now. And all the cars are still running around, but who would want to be Zhou Guanyu down at the back of the field? I wonder if he can see anything. Let's just listen into Vettel.
Heavy rain now. And a lot of water generally.
Copy.
Yeah, the rain is really coming down heavier now, Sam.
Well, I'm still keeping an eye on the FI messaging system. Still no confirmation of this actually being an extra formation lap or a race start lap. I believe this is an extra formation lap, which will mean 1 lap will come off the total race distance. The race, as I understand it, has yet to officially start.
Okay, so fair enough. We're on board with the safety car there. Nice view from the safety car itself, looking back at the 2 Ferraris, running 1 and 2. But the predictability, when you've got a race at Monaco normally, running 1 and 2, we could well have seen in the drive, for example, Alan, Ferrari may well have said, whichever one of you is running second, which was probably going to be Sainz after the start, you can hold up the rest, and the one that's in front can just go, get on with it up front, and we can hold off everybody else. Well, that's something that there just isn't going to be so straightforward now.
Yeah, I certainly think everything that was on the planned strategy discussions yesterday after qualifying and today is probably going to be pretty much ripped up. The intensity now, looking out of the window, is just coming down. It's a deluge right now.
Oh, we're hoping to hear from Daniel. Not quite getting the radio sound coming through. We'll have another go in a moment, but yeah, just look at the rain falling onto the barriers down there at Tabac, and just shows you how that really is getting to a dangerous level, isn't it, Alan? I mean, you know, with the Formula One cars, particularly with this year's cars with these floors that are not lifted up at all, when you get into aquaplaning, you're in real trouble.
Yeah, but just look at it. It's like, you know, when the safety car is going past. Here's Leclerc's radio.
Training like crazy.
Yeah, but now you can also see behind that there is lines of water as well, and it's
red flag. So they've actually decided to bring them in, Alan. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. You know, this sort of situation, all you would have is a couple of cars in the barrier before you got to the first corner. And so therefore I think that is a good decision by Eduardo Freitas, with just actually putting a pause on it at the moment.
Look at that. Look at the amount of water running along the curve there. That's out of the exit of the last corner, and that is pretty scary. So I agree. I think Eduardo Freitas has made an absolutely correct decision. I know many people will think, come on, they should go racing, but remember Belgium last year? Well, they didn't get to go racing at all. I don't think we're going to be in that situation. I think they will get to go racing here, but a tricky situation. Now, this is a bit awkward too, isn't it? Everyone coming into the pits. Let's hope they don't get any overheating problems. It's not nearly as much of a problem as it used to be. These modern PUs, power units, can normally idle for quite a while without overheating. We often see them sitting at the end of the pit lane, so hopefully they'll be okay.
Yeah, and just looking at the Palace, there's a flag on top of the Palace, and behind it, it is actually very light, clear skies coming. And so therefore this intensity right now I think is going to be short-lived, as you said, and that's also one of the reasons that they would just bring them into the pits and put it under red flag at this moment. Hopefully that is exactly the case and we get back to racing very, very soon.
Yes, well, that would be lovely to see them back out on the track, but for now it is definitely the safe place to be in the pits, and I'm afraid a lot of the mechanics are getting very wet out there. Charles Leclerc is getting out of his car. I saw a lot of the drivers were changing crash helmets, by the way, obviously with it getting wet, so they've gone for clear visored crash helmets rather than the tinted visors we tend to see, especially here at Monaco when it's bright as normal, as it has been the last 2 days, but very grey today. And race administration's just said the easy up tents can be used, so they can actually put tents over the cars now if necessary to try and keep them a little bit drier in these very wet conditions. It looks to me as though most of the drivers have disappeared off.
Yeah, you definitely go and try and keep warm as well. Okay, it's not cold, air temperature's 22, but when you sit in the car your overalls get wet. That's extra weight, and you don't want to be having that. Never mind the fact that you just be better trying to keep yourself, you know, prepared. But also just another thing about those easy ups, you know, the steering wheels, effectively that's like your computer, it's got everything on it. But here's some Schumacher team radio.
I think I've never got this wet in a Formula car, ever.
Well, he's able to laugh, but he's able to say never experienced rain conditions this wet in a Formula One car before. He's in his second year, remember, Mick Schumacher, and it's quite an interesting one to hear, of course. Although Belgium last year was very wet, they really didn't get much chance to do much in Belgium.
I mean, it's just a river down here. It's, yeah, not good. So I'll explain the situation now. Basically, the whole thing starts again. So we have the car set ready. They'll give us a 10-minute warning. It'll be very similar set of circumstances behind the safety car, I expect.
So Sam, that means that we've got a fair bit of time here because nobody has to panic. They will be given plenty of warning, and then we start the kind of whole race build-up procedure in much the same way.
Yeah, strictly speaking, there's a 10-minute sort of rolling thing that will keep going, but essentially the race control will say race start will be at time particularly, and interestingly, just seeing there, Ben, what's going on?
Yes, Carlos Sainz there, playing around with his boots in the camera garage.
Yeah, that's our own garage. Formula One has its own garage in the pit lane, and that was our garage, not Ferrari's garage. Despite the picture on the wall, that's where we sort of service our cameras and things like that, and where Will sometimes hangs out before the grid walk and things like that. That was a bit of a surprise to see. Cooling the cars going on as standard, but yeah, the race start procedure will be completely from scratch. It could mean we go back to a standing start on intermediates or wets. There is no decision taken on tyres. Everything's reset. The only thing that will change is the total race distance will almost certainly be reduced because the teams have now used 2 laps worth of fuel. Yeah. So I think we will see just a couple of laps knocked off the total race distance, but we'll have a new formation lap, a new start sequence, and free tyre choice, unless something else changes.
Alan, give us your thoughts. In the background, meanwhile, we've got some wonderful shots of the cars as they were going around and just giving us an idea of how wet it was out there. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, 2 thoughts. One is that it's actually stopped raining just in front of me, or not stopped raining, but it's very light in front of me. The other thing is those easy up tents, not everybody's put them up. Some have just got one umbrella over the cockpit of the car. Personally, I would have got the easy up tent as a team because the car's full of electronics, and even although you actually test the steering wheels basically submerged in water to ensure nothing gets into it, you just don't want to take any extra risks at all. But some have decided, in fact, Williams, for example, one's got an easy up, the other one's just got the brolly up.
It was interesting to see how wet Max is, actually. I mean, he was out there in the heavy rain, and although he'd taken the top layer of his overalls off, his fireproof underwear was looking really quite damp. So that just shows how wet it was when they were going around. They are quite wet now. So we shall see how this goes. Zhou Guanyu is actually in his car. He's decided to hang on in there with an umbrella over his head. But some of those tents have worked and some of them not so well.
Budget cap, isn't it?
Sam, we've got some more questions coming in, which is fun to see. What else have we got?
Well, yeah, we've had a question come in here from at Pillar 3 Jason. What's the forecast for the rain of the race? Well, as Alan said, you can see the sky is brightening up behind this belt of clouds that's moving across the Principality, and I still think we are going to get a dry finish to this race. I think the sun's going to come out, the track's going to dry off pretty quickly, and I think they're going to go very quickly through intermediates to the slick tyres, and we are going to have back to a normal Grand Prix. But the track conditions will be terrible. It'll be very green, and tyre choice is going to be very, very crucial.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, and in a way it's an ideal to have this sort of change of conditions as we go through the race rather than staying constantly wet. It will certainly make things a bit more experimental in terms of the strategy stops. We've got another question coming in. Nordic Saga, who is the best driver when it comes to rain? Alan, what are your thoughts in the current sort of grid of drivers? Who do you think really thrives when we get a wet race?
Well, this man we're looking at now, Max Verstappen, ever since he got into a racing car in wet conditions, slippery conditions, Carlos Sainz has been absolutely dynamite in a lot of races I've seen. And then the other one I would say is Fernando Alonso. Between those 3, I think you've got 3 special drivers in these slippery conditions.
Yeah, I remember watching Verstappen win the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim in rain. He did a complete 360 spin at one point, but still won it. And there was Brazil a few years ago where his car control, he so nearly hit the barrier, and yet he managed to keep it out of the barrier and recover to a very good position. As you say, Sainz also very strong. Sam?
Well, as you can see on the screen, I'm not going to try and pronounce that Twitter handle, but when was the last time we had a wet race in Monaco? Well, I've gone and had a look, and I'd actually forgotten, but I've gone and looked back into it, and actually had a very similar situation to this in 2016, where it rained just before the start of the race. People had to go out. Nico Rosberg made an early choice for intermediate tyres, and the race then played out and finished in the dry. So I was actually at that Grand Prix, so I don't know how I forgot it, but that's the last time we had proper wet weather running in Monaco. But as Alan said, there are patches of newly surfaced asphalt on this circuit. Now, they've had public traffic running over it. There's oil that drops off buses, and who knows what's fallen out at the Rascar section. The level of grip for the drivers in those sections, particularly on a drying track where all of those oils start leaching out of the asphalt, that could be really unpredictable. And we saw that very slippery corner in Miami, and that was directly as a result of just that process of a little bit of water reacting with a new surface.
Alex Albon is drying out his race boots as well in preparation for things to start getting up and running, but we don't have a time given to us yet. We're still waiting to know from race control as to when things are going to start to build up, and there's no rush for him to get out onto the circuit right now. So here we have another question at Fleuren Almeida. How will the dry tunnel affect the extreme wet tyres' life?
Well, I think on the left rear tyre in particular, but also the left front, that long right-hand sweep through the tunnel, which will be drier, a lot drier than the rest of the circuit, it will damage those tyres on the left-hand side, but they're quite loaded because it's high speed. But it's not a very big section of track, so they'll be able to cool them down as soon as they come into the chicane, into that very wet section, so that temperature won't build up long enough to do massive damage, so it won't be the biggest problem. But if you do start getting a situation where there's a dry line and a wet line, that's when you go to intermediates, and that's when you'll start seeing people doing what I call puddle hunting, as the drivers drive offline to cool down the surface of the tyres. I think Alan's done plenty of that in his career.
Puddle hunting, I come from the southwest of Scotland. It was our national thing that we did. But it's interesting you said about that, because I think when it gets to that point coming through the tunnel where it would damage the tyre, the rest of the circuit's also going to be drying up as well. And so ultimately it'll go all together. Pierre Gasly, he's one that I spoke to him yesterday after qualifying, and he was actually hoping this situation would definitely happen, because it does give him a chance to try to come from 17th on the grid, come back through. Anyway, wise word from Franz Tost as well, who's seen a lot of these wet Grand Prix over the last 25-30 years here in Monaco.
It looks to me like there's a visor change going on Gasly's helmet there. Quite a lot of drivers will bring different helmets for different conditions with different sets of visors bolted onto them. And Alan, I don't know if it was like that when you were driving for Toyota, or even when you were testing for, well, a million teams you tested for, starting with Lola, and I can't even remember all of the others, but I think Benetton was in there quite a lot. Did you have a whole different stack of visors and helmets available to you for the start?
Yeah, you always did. You always did. You always had a spare, so even if it was a sunny day, you would have a spare with an alternative on it as well, but to cover all situations. What you want to do is to cover, first of all, if there's a problem with the radio. So you need to have a replacement that's exactly the same in case there is a radio problem. And secondly, in these situations, something that covers the next option in terms of weather conditions as well.
And Alan was kind enough to actually give me some of his spare visors when I went off to race my Formula Ford, which was very kind of him, so thank you for those, Alan.
I've still got some, by the way, Ben, if you want to take them. There's no problem.
Okay,
Has he sent
I don't need them any longer.
All right. Well, we're looking down into the Williams scene at the moment, as everybody just working out what they need to do to prepare.
Just remember here, also as well, the visors, the worst thing that can happen is going behind the safety car, going slow, the water gets behind the visor, and so not on the front, and that's why they've sometimes got rubber strips that seal the top of the visor to the helmet, and if you get that, or fogging or something, which is a lot less than it used to be, because now you've actually got slightly heated visors, like you've got a heated windscreen, and that takes away that fogging, misting problem.
You get a sense just watching. We're getting some amazing pictures. Yeah, you'd love to see the cars racing, but actually you get to see the drivers, and they're all obviously in a fairly tense state. They're waiting to get out there. They're waiting to drive a Formula One car that is capable of 200 miles an hour, not around Monaco because there isn't a long enough straight, but in wet and slippery conditions to race for one of the most prestigious races of the entire year. And you can see the tension not only in the drivers, but in the staff, in the friends, in families. Everybody is kind of building up to what could be a phenomenal event today, Alan.
Yeah, I always found these situations quite difficult, because mentally you're prepared to have now done 33 minutes, or about 25% of the race. And then suddenly, through other things, that has been sort of elongated. And as a driver, you were always in that position of just wanting the lights to go out, and then the race was starting, because that's your office. That's when you're in control. Everything else, as they say in the film, is only about waiting. But now this waiting period has just been elongated as well.
Andreas Seidel, he always looks pretty cool and relaxed, and he's looking that way again, very much in charge of how things are run at McLaren when it comes to overseeing strategy, etc. Of course, they have their own strategy experts, but he will be monitoring everything that's going on. He has a very strong engineering ability to himself as well, but nobody can do anything much at the moment, Sam, because we're still waiting to know when they're actually going to be launched.
Yeah, absolutely no communications yet from race control. I suspect the first thing we'll see from race control before they make a decision on going back to racing, or starting racing in fact, because we haven't started the timer here at Monaco, we'll see that Mercedes safety car go out and maybe do a couple of laps just to see what the conditions are like, report back to Eduardo Freitas and just say, look, I think we can go racing on this, we can start the race then, but maybe we should do a rolling start or a standing start. And these are big questions that need to be asked at the moment by race control.
Lots of conversations going on. Carlos Sainz's dad on the left there, so having a nice little chat away with other people. Giovinazzi there as well, now part of the Ferrari team, not racing himself. I wonder how he's feeling about potentially not being out in this one.
I think he's probably missing it. I think all of these racing drivers like to get in a car as often as possible. Carlos Sainz's dad, though, he knows a thing or two about driving around Monaco in slippery conditions.
Yeah, fantastic car control, mind you. So does his son. They have their own little rally track at their place in Spain.
Well, for once, Carlos Sainz is definitely going to be able to avoid the gravel trap this weekend, because there aren't any around Monaco.
But the barriers are definitely there to be hit. So let's see whether he can get away with it. He's got a good record here at Monaco in terms of finishing races. He's not had any major dramas, and as we've said already, he's usually pretty good in the wet conditions.
Now that was quite an interesting shot there, Ben. Now we can see just the exit of Rascasse there. It's definitely not raining down in this final sequence of corners at Monaco, but we did just see a shot what looked like on the run down to Poitiers, where the raindrops are still falling on the track. So it does look like the shower is moving away off towards Italy, and the track will start to dry. And you can see in the spectators there, the brollies are generally going down. They do look a bit soggy, but not Nürburgring soggy as you might want to call it. But this track will certainly not be dry when we start the race. The question is, will they start on the wets, the intermediates, and who's going to be the first to roll the dice at Monte Carlo and go for the slicks?
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. Look, the smiles are still there, even though we haven't got any racing going on yet with this delay to the start of the Monaco Grand Prix. But there's still a lot of attention into how things are going to develop here. And it's lovely to see so many fans at Monaco this year. Of course, the Monaco race did not happen in 2020 during the whole of the lockdown period, but it did come back last year. But it seems to be an even higher level this year, with fans, with travelling, everything being a great deal easier than it was, and a very strong support network for Formula One coming to enjoy this very, very prestigious event.
Well, there you go, the brollies are going down very clearly. It's 21 degrees air temperature. There you can see on the weather radar what I was talking about, that system moving away towards Italy. However, just look over Cagnes-sur-Mer and you can see the weather raising up just a little bit. There you can see it coming in. So I think we are probably going to get a bit more water onto the circuit, but that may happen just after we get to green flag running.
And it may be why race control are just waiting a little bit before telling the teams, right, we can start to get ready, because if they feel there's that bit more heavy rain still to come in, they may feel that it's safer to just delay this race getting underway. So there are going to be a few more minutes, no doubt about it. So you've got Red Bull bosses all together there with Max. And I wonder what that discussion is all about. Sergio Perez not a part of that discussion at the moment. Another question coming in: what changes can teams make during the red flag to adapt the car to wet conditions? Well,
that's a really good question, because there are specific technical regulations about that, and it basically relates to the cooling packages on the car. So those louvres panels you can see on the side of the car, McLaren running particularly big ones this weekend, much bigger than they normally run. You're allowed to swap those out. Some of the internal ducting underneath the bodywork can be changed. Your brake ducts, front and rear, can be changed as well. Red Bull, for example, are running much larger brake ducts than they normally run. So actually, I don't think you're going to see many ducting changes on this circuit. The only reason you would is probably actually to tighten them up slightly, because it's cooler than it has been. But you're still talking about a low average speed circuit where the temperatures do build up. So you are still going to need quite a lot of cooling around Monaco, though not perhaps as much as some of the cars are running. You don't want to be overcooled, but I maybe see a few teams put some blanking plates over it, but I don't think you're going to see too much of that.
You're seeing a bit of brightness in some areas, Alan, but in others you're saying that there's still some rain falling.
Yeah, the brightness is definitely not in front of the pits, because it's raining heavily again, as people are now putting on the umbrellas, or putting on the Pacamax, and umbrellas are going back up. I wouldn't say it's as heavy as it was when they did the formation laps, but it's not far off it.
And being asked, how does this compare to 1984? Are the conditions much worse? It was very wet, that 1984 race. That was the race that was brought to an early conclusion when Alain Prost was leading but being caught by Ayrton Senna. And Stefan Beloff was also doing a fantastic job in that race. And it was ended early, and it was very damp.
Only 9 cars finished that race, including Stefan Beloff. Beloff was disqualified for having an underweight car, so maybe that's why he was doing so well, but he was a brilliant driver. Not the lowest number of finishers ever at Monaco. The lowest number of finishers ever at Monaco was just 3 cars in 1996. There were 6 classified finishers, but 3 of them were left in a lump at Portier when they crashed into Eddie Irvine.
Yeah, no, sometimes it can be like that here. Let's see how it works out. Last year, there were very few problems indeed. We didn't even have a single safety car period, which is so unusual at Monaco. Well, this year is a bit more like it has been over the years, with rain coming just at the last moment, delays. Do the cockpits have drains, or does rain change the weight or balance of the car?
Rain doesn't really change the weight or balance of the car. These cars are weighing over, they weigh so much that the weight of rain into sort of the driver's overalls that soak in, it's not going to make any significant difference. I don't think they do have drains at the bottom of the floors anymore, but they used to drill a little hole in the bottom of the cockpit to stop them filling up. Alan, you raced, I remember, the Audi R15 in a lot of wet conditions at Le Mans and various other circuits, and that was seriously wet. You carried on driving. Did they have a hole in the bottom for that, just to drop out the bottom?
Yeah, basically you drilled a small hole, or there was a hole which was like a drain hole that was in the cockpit, so that it didn't, because there's a lot of electronics in there as well, and it was basically as an extra protectionism against that. However, the problem is not when you're driving fast, because with aerodynamics it flows over the top of the car and generally over the top of the driver. The problem is when you're driving slow behind the safety car, because then you don't have that effect, and the water tends to come up off the wheels as you're turning and dump into the cockpit itself.
A horrible situation. There's Valtteri Bottas just waiting to hear whether things are going to be going or not. And another one, I think, to keep an eye on in this race in wet conditions. He could deliver a pretty good result. He starts down in 12th place.
Very good in mixed conditions. Another driver who's got extensive rallying experience. Finnish drivers always tend to be pretty good in the rain, a bit like Scottish drivers actually, but they tend to go quite well. Just on the wet weather and sort of the cockpit getting too wet, one of the reasons you do sometimes have those little drillings, there's actually a very nice video if you search out of Alex Brundle doing some laps around Goodwood in his Mustang, and it was slowly filling with water, and it looks more like the harbour than it did like a cockpit of the car.
Not an easy situation at all. No, well, the tents are up there and they are protecting the cars. You can see the rain is still falling quite heavily down at the exit of the pits. Are we going to see the safety car out on circuit in a moment to give race control a little bit more feedback on the conditions? There we are. We've got the onboard camera in the safety car, but they haven't been sent out yet. But I think, as you said, Sam, it could be fairly soon that they are sent out on track. But we are getting this other shower, which I think race control must have seen was coming. You saw it on the radar, and I think that's partly why they have decided to delay it. Interestingly, Pierre Gasly's watching historic pictures from wet races in the past here at Monaco in his garage, seeing what he can learn from onboards. So the team have got some onboard footage, presumably, from wet races, and they're showing Pierre, trying to give him some clues as to where to go and where not to go.
I saw one of the teams doing this with, it wasn't the historic onboard, so just looking at a previous session and a bit of a moment like that. If you go onto F1 TV, if you're watching this on F1 TV, obviously don't do it now, but after the race you can go and select onboard cameras from lots of different Grand Prix going back through the history of that, and you can actually see some wet weather running and different laps from different conditions. And then actually what I think the teams are doing, they've probably asked Formula One to supply them with some wet weather onboard laps, and they've kept them just for this opportunity. And I wonder if AlphaTauri have onboard wets for every single Grand Prix that they go to that we've not been to before. That would be quite an interesting thing to see if they did.
Alan?
Yeah, you tend to actually take a copy of the previous race and then it's replayed, and a lot of the time you learn information from watching the onboard, and then that's stored for the next season when it comes up. It may never be used for 3 or 4 years, but it may not necessarily just be about the wets. We used to do it for race starts, and so you would then replay all of the race starts to see what the general perspective was for race starts, and that would be one thing I would look at right now if I was in there, was to actually see what the run down to the first corner was like.
Got another question come in from Alex24 Lee. Will Venturi tunnels work worse in a wet race, Sam?
No, they'll just work. They'll work much the same. The aerodynamic flow is pretty much the same. It's just because the cars will be going a bit slower. Average speed will be lower and the cars will sit a little bit higher off the ground because the radius of a wet weather Pirelli is slightly bigger than a slick tyre. So it will work marginally worse because it's slightly higher ride height and it's going slightly slower, but not in a massive way different.
Okay, thanks for the questions coming in. Use the hashtag F1 Live if you want to join in the fun and games as we are still awaiting the start of the Monaco Grand Prix, round 7 of the 2022 World Championship. And even Christian Horner's taking a seat now. You don't often see that, do you? He's usually marching around up on the pit wall, his feet flicking around or talking to media all the time. He's having a bit of a quiet time.
He's got Max Verstappen sat behind him. It looks like they've had a bit of a set to and they don't want to talk to each other, but Max is just focusing on the race ahead. I wonder if that's going to end up like Fernando Alonso sitting by the side of the track in Brazil.
There's Checo, Sergio Perez coming in now to have a little chat to see what they can find out. And Toto Wolff also engaging with some other guests. Another question from F1 Nana 1950. What effect will all this water have on porpoising? That sort of follows on from what you were just saying already, Sam.
Exactly. I mean, you may think for an aquatic mammal you'd see quite a lot of porpoising in the wet, but actually the opposite is true. Because the cars are sitting slightly higher off the ground, because the cars are going slightly slower, you're going to see a little bit less porpoising, which will probably help out Charles Leclerc, who was just getting that really difficult porpoising stage coming out of the tunnel, and that was affecting his braking point. Ooh, look at that weather.
Yeah, things are looking a bit better. There was a lovely little shake of the head from Pierre Gasly watching some of that onboard footage, and I'd love to know what it was he was looking at, but it can so easily go wrong around here in the wet from a driver's point of view or from the driver you're racing against. It can often go wrong. We'll have to wait and see. Down there by the swimming pool area, the grandstands, great viewing platforms. It is actually the favourite area for Charles Leclerc, he said, about this track, because he learnt to swim as a child in that swimming pool, because of course he was born and grew up in this part of the world. That swimming pool was where he learnt to swim, and he loves that section of the track in terms of pushing the car, and it's an interesting part, isn't it, Alan?
Yeah, it certainly is. It's a swimming pool in the summer, it's an ice skating rink in the winter, and they have ice karting on there as well every now and then. And so it's great. A multi-purpose facility, but from a circuit point of view, it's very quick through this section, extremely quick, and with the latest cars that's been quite difficult for a few. That's where Daniel Ricciardo had his accident, but it's always just a special place, a swimming pool complex. Everybody knows about it, doesn't matter whether you've been to Monaco or not.
Knowing who some of your neighbours are, Alan, I'm very curious to know who holds the lap record on the ice karting.
I actually don't know the answer to that, but we could do a bit of a poll, and if this delay goes on, we can maybe actually announce it before the end of the race.
When you're here in Monaco, and you've been here for many years, living here, the build-up to the Grand Prix weekend, does it take a long time? Is it all does it sort of affect your lives a little bit as everything gets ready for it?
Yes, it does, because actually this year it started at the end of February, and that's because 2 weeks ago they had the historic Grand Prix, and 2 weeks prior to that was Formula E, and so therefore it was the end of February when the circuit started to build up. But they are so good and so experienced of knowing how to build it up. The resurfacing works that we're talking about, the new tarmac, that was done at night, and not over multiple nights, but basically night, and therefore the impact on the local community is, I would say, as limited as it can be. Clearly in race week, then it's just chaos. There's no question about it. And so in that respect, the whole event, I think Monaco comes alive in reality in the month of May, in my opinion.
How many of your friends in Monaco who are actually not immersed in Formula One actually tend to take a holiday at this time of year?
Yeah, well, certainly for the weather. The weather at this moment in time, I would say that they take the holiday.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what we were seeing on the screen now. Otmar Safnauer was talking with one of his engineers, or one of his drivers actually. I couldn't see who it was, might have been Esteban Ocon actually. Looking at the weather radar, seeing what I'm seeing as well is that, yes, it may have stopped raining now. There is more rain on the way, but I feel quite frustrated because it's going to take more than 10 minutes to get the race going, because that's race control has to give a 10-minute warning to the teams to get ready, the drivers to get their kit on and get in the cars and get ready to go. That means that rain might move in, and I just feel we should get going and put the drivers and test them out, because that's what they're paid the big money for.
Well, Sam and I are at the F1 Live base here at Biggin Hill, but out there, Alan McNish in the commentary box, which is over the grandstand opposite the pit, so you do get a bit more of a view than we get, Alan.
Yeah, certainly, and it's been interesting because as you've been talking about the weather coming in and from the Nice side of the country, then I look out and sometimes, like now, there is not a drop coming out of the sky. Literally 1 minute later, it's heavy rain again. So it doesn't really seem to be relative to the clouds. It just seems to have a dump of weather that comes in and rains. And that's the tricky part from the FIA's perspective and from Eduardo Freitas' point of view. But there is a point when we have to go racing. We don't want another Spa, that's for sure. What happened last year, we want to actually go racing, and every single driver and every team wants to do that. And I can guarantee you, everybody sitting in the grandstands, because especially for the Ferrari fans and the Monegasque fans, they want to see Charles Leclerc trying to be the first Monaco winner of this race.
Yeah, first in Formula One times. There was one pre-Formula One times when it was a Monaco Grand Prix in the 1930s. It was won in 1931 by Louis Chiron. And in fact, Louis Chiron was a founder of this race at Monaco. He was one of the people who really kind of helped put it all together in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Went on to race at Monaco on and off over the years, raced as late as 1955 in fact, and was one of the older drivers to race in Formula One, because it was Formula One. Remember, the Formula One name began in 1950, but he a former winner before the Second World War.
And I think he was actually 55 years old when he finally raced it here as well.
Yeah, pretty impressive, very impressive. And there's corner, one of those swimming pool, the area going into the swimming pool, named after Louis Chiron now. So if Charles Leclerc can back up the success that Louis Chiron had and give the fans here, the locals, a chance to celebrate a Monaco victory from a Monegasque driver, that would be a really, really wonderful thing. But I tell you what, it is so unpredictable. He might be on pole position at Monaco, but with these weather conditions that we're going to see the cars out in, it's a very difficult one to predict.
Yeah, at this moment though, seeing Alex Albon there, it doesn't look like the teams are getting prepared for the 10-minute warning. I'd say at this moment in time, it's sort of just getting pushed a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, that's my impression as well. Without that 10-minute warning, because there's been no indication of a 10-minute warning, or the teams haven't been given any indication of what's going on from race control that I can see on the official data system at the moment, it does look like it's going to be a bit more than 10 minutes before we get going, which is a bit of a surprise, because looking at the radar, there is definitely a potential another cluster of rain about to drop itself onto the circuit, but that's a few minutes away. Actually, I feel we could get going. Our timing screens are saying lap 1, which I don't think is accurate though.
Yeah, but just now all of the cars have just started firing them up and warming them up, because they will have been sitting there for what, Sam, is it like 30-35 minutes now? And all the engine and the temperatures have cooled down, and so they're now started to, engines are in life, but I think that's more just getting the temperature back into them as opposed to preparation for going racing.
Well, it is good to see that there is a bit of build-up going on here. We shall just see when they're actually going to be coming out, but there's been no fans disappearing. They're all still around. They're all ready and waiting to enjoy the fun and games of all of this, and we will find out fairly soon, I think, from race control, but there are no messages coming up just yet as to when this race is going to get underway. It's fans from all over the world, though, coming to Monaco, and making the most of this weekend. It's really fantastic to see them all here. Let's hope that they do get a race to enjoy, and that we don't run too late before we get started.
Well, I mean, there'll be some fans there who don't want to go super late on this Grand Prix, though I don't think we're in any danger of it for the fans at the track. I'm in danger of it, which is slightly sad, but let's carry on, because there's the Indy 500 after this, and I know quite a few people in the paddock want to watch that American motor race as well, not least the McLaren team, who've got Alex Palou alongside Juan Pablo Montoya, and I forget who their other driver is actually, in that race, as well as Jimmy Johnson. He's driving one of the Chevrolet powered cars, a NASCAR driver. Now, a lot of people from the paddock will just cross out the back of the paddock into one of the bars that's just there, has big screens in, and they'll go and watch the Indy 500 in the bar there, whereas McLaren, I think, also show it on the big screens to see how their cars are getting on. Zach Brown, I believe, rather than being at the circuit this weekend in Monaco, has gone to Indianapolis.
Yeah, Felix Rosenqvist is the other driver for them. and he's actually had a very strong showing since he joined McLaren from Ganassis. But you're right, there's two of the biggest races in motorsport on this weekend. We've got the Monaco Formula 1 Grand Prix, and we've got the Indy 500, and the third one is the Le Mans 24 Hours, which is coming up in a few weeks. Eddie Irvine on the left and Lawrence Stroll on the right, two very, very big characters. And considering this Aston Martin team, that started as Jordan Grand Prix many, many years ago.
Yes, Eddie Jordan it was. Eddie Irvine, of course, was a driver.
Sorry, did I say Irvine?
Yeah,
sorry, apologies.
Easily done. 10-minute signal will be shown at 3:55. That means in just a few seconds, 20 seconds in fact. So things will now start to happen. He'll get a message in a moment. Sebastian, you're watching Sebastian Vettel. He'll get a message from one of his colleagues in just a moment to say, start getting ready.
Yeah, he's not got his communication system on, so he's just looking down the camera in a sort of wistful way, probably thinking about environmental concerns he has. But actually, yeah, the team will be telling him very shortly that, actually, Sebastian, 10 minutes, you're going to have to do some driving.
Well, we shall certainly see the team starting to make things happen. And yes, look, there you are. You've got some jogging going on down the pit lane now, as they've just had the message and they realise they've got to start getting themselves ready, get prepared, get in the cars. And there's Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen both running their way down to the other end of the pit lane. And you can see some wheels being pushed around, so suddenly it's all beginning to ramp up again, isn't it? Speed up. These pits are very unusual here, Alan, aren't they, in terms of both space and all the offices above the garages too.
Yeah, these are infrastructures that are just put up for the race and then taken down, because in 1 month this whole area in front will actually be for international show jumping, so it'll have horses of a very different size, but it's narrow, it's contained, it's squeezed into it. But I've actually got one question for you, Sam. They had to use the extreme wets before. Do they still have to use that in the restart?
No, I don't think they do, because this is a completely fresh restart. They will have to use the extreme wets, I believe, if the restart happens behind the safety car. We still don't have confirmation of a rolling or standing start, but it will be a standing start if we don't roll out on the formation lap behind the safety car. So at the moment, it's a complete reset, complete standard race start procedure. So the tyres will have to be bolted on the car in, well, the next few minutes.
Okay, well, it's all pretty exciting. And as many of you have been talking to us using the hashtag F1 Live, the 1984 race was a key race when it came to wet conditions, particularly as the race developed. And Alain Prost was under this much pressure towards the end of the race from Senna. And they were that close. Senna had gradually closed up the gap and was on charge to go past when the race was stopped. Prost had been really pushing for the race to be stopped. It was stopped, and so he ended up with the race victory. 1984, that was the debut season for Ayrton Senna in the Toleman. He had come from Formula 3 direct into Formula 1, but it didn't quite work out for him to get a victory for Toleman there because of the race being stopped. But it was one of the all-time classics, no doubt about it, and I wonder if we're on for another all-time classic here today. Well, Charles Leclerc's getting his crash helmet back on. He's still going to be starting from pole position. He's going to be the man up front. Advantage in many ways, because he'll have clear air. He won't have spray into his visor, unlike so many of the others, if he gets off the line okay. Carlos Sainz, his teammate, that helps in a way, Alan, doesn't it? To know that your teammate is the one behind going into turn one, it's less likely a teammate's going to make a dangerous lunge than if it was Max Verstappen.
Yeah, certainly if Max or Sergio were alongside, I think then Charles Leclerc would have a slightly, I would say, more looks in the mirror going into turn one. But still, in any circumstance, it's a good position here. It's a very, very short run to the first corner. And as long as he gets an initial launch off the line, then I think he should be safe. And then he's got to focus on his braking point and make sure that he doesn't just grab an inside wheel and lock up going into turn one.
You say a good start off the line. What we see sometimes in the wet is drivers using second gear rather than first gear, don't we? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, basically, you've got an amazing amount of power, but a tremendous amount of torque, especially out of these latest engines. And if you've got low grip, that torque equals wheel spin. If you go off in second gear, that's a gear that allows you to go for longer in terms of speed, so therefore it's actually got less torque transmission, and so you can generally get a smoother acceleration. It's also got, on the flip side of it, it's maybe a little bit easier to kick into the anti-stall. But ultimately, it's about that smooth transition from 0 kilometres per hour up to 100, 120 kilometres per hour.
This is the second shortest run to the first corner of all the tracks on the current calendar. Baku, funnily enough, which is coming up next, it's got a very short run to the first corner, but here at Monaco it is not far, as you say, so as long as you can just get that initial start away. Lewis doing a little bit of stretching before he squeezes himself into the cockpit of the Mercedes, and rightly so. They're making very careful to dry the racing boots. We see this quite often, Alan, but it is important, isn't it? Because any slip and slide can be tricky.
Yes, and also they've got like a little cover. If you remember your galoshes back in the 80s when we were racing against each other, Ben, and these are the much more elegant equivalents right now that they're taking off just before you go in. But you need to have that grip on the pedal, and you don't want anything in there at all. So there's cleaning of the pad as well of the pedal before you jump into it. Lando Norris may be suffering from tonsillitis, but he looks to be smiling, at least starting 5th on the grid.
That's nice to see him having a bit of a laugh there, because he's definitely been looking a little bit poorly this week, but he's been delivering brilliant jobs, Sam, in all the practice sessions, and then also in qualifying, of course, with that 5th on the grid that he's got.
Yeah, absolutely, and I need to study my McLaren drivers a little bit better when it comes to IndyCar. Of course, it's not Alex Palou, he's a Ganassi driver, it's Patricio O'Ward for McLaren at Indy 500.
Very good, so we're in a bit of a clear band now. It does look like there could be some rain later on.
We've just been told the race will resume at 4:05 local time, so that's behind the safety car. That's less than 5 minutes. So good question for you there, Sam. Has the 3-hour countdown started with the first formation lap behind safety car?
Article 6.8 of the Formula 1 sporting regulation states that if the formation lap is started behind the safety car, it was, the original race distance will be deemed to be the distance calculated in accordance with Article 5.4c, not the 260 kilometres of a normal Monaco Grand Prix. They've reduced the lap from that. However, the maximum race time of 3 hours will commence at the scheduled race start time, which was 1 hour and 1 minute ago. Interestingly, the race control message says the race will resume at 16:05 behind the safety car.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, whether it's a race or formation lap. That's a slightly mixed signal there.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, because it very much came up as formation lap earlier, and yet, as you said, the timing screens are showing 1 lap out of 77 on one of our timing screens, but we'll have to wait and see. As you say, there seemed to be a formation lap. It didn't seem to be an official race lap.
Well, there wasn't that message of extra formation lap, which I was looking for. That didn't come through on the information system, so that may be the first race lap. So essentially this was a red flag. Then we still have the question mark of a standing or rolling restart. That hasn't been decided yet.
And also one other thing we have to keep in mind, if there is rain coming in, and we go back to the 1984, is if they stop the race at a certain point, it is half points or full points. And normally it would be 58 laps for the full points, but that would obviously then, Sam, drop to 57 laps in this particular situation.
Absolutely. So the length of the race, and they changed that rule after Spa last year. So the race, the number of points allocated will be decided by how many racing laps we get in.
Because you can get points even now for 25% of the race, can't you?
3-minute warning there, 3-minute board being shown to the drivers. Now, I do think now our timing screen is showing the countdown accurately now, that we have 1 hour 57 minutes of potential Monaco Grand Prix action. With these conditions, this may be a time-limited race, not a distance-limited race. The teams are going to have to be very careful on their race strategies, particularly if we get stoppages or safety cars later on.
Okay, well, now we are beginning to build up once again to see if we can get this Monaco Grand Prix underway. Charles Leclerc settled into the Ferrari. It really is a beautifully designed car, and it's been very successful, but it is no longer leading the World Championship as a result of a non-finish last time out.
Obviously, we
do expect more rain, but it's a little bit confused at the moment. So, Daniel, there's a dead zone in the radar. Rain entered that about 5 minutes ago, and we can't see yet whether it's going to come out this side. So, it could be rain in 5-7 minutes' time.
Okay. So it's always difficult, isn't it, when you're trying to get information, and even the information you're getting with all of the incredible supplies we all have now, Sam, and I know you're pretty good at finding information about anything. It's interesting that even in Formula One, they're struggling to get all the information they want.
There's different radar solutions available, and people looking at different things. Some people look at aviation, weather forecast. I look at a whole aggregated bunch of stuff, and basically came to the same conclusion that it might rain. I think it probably will rain. I don't know how heavily and I don't know for how long, but there is a big chunk of rain moving slightly along from sort of Antibes towards Nice and Monaco, but it's slightly further to the north, so it's not entirely clear what...
I remember, funnily enough, Alan, when you were talking about seeing Eddie Jordan, I remember talking to Eddie and how when things were happening at Silverstone, they had a family that was in a perfect position to be able to give them a call and tell them whether rain was on the way to Silverstone. And over the years, sometimes having somebody in just the right place makes all the difference.
Yeah, certainly. That's the old school way of doing it. Now you're looking at very sophisticated radar systems. However, sometimes you still have to put your hand out of the pit box and see what it's like. That's caught quite a few teams out around here in the past, and I'm sure can also do exactly the same today.
Well, looking at a full set of full wet, the blue sidewall Pirelli tyres at this point, and I think that's the right decision because all of the teams are seeing that there's more rain forecast, but those tyres should not last the entire Grand Prix. We will see people stop, but when they stop, will they try and jump straight from wets to slicks, or will they try and jump from wets to inters to slicks? I think wets to inters is more likely, but we could be seeing some slick laps towards the end of the Grand Prix. Really big gamble to be played here in Monte Carlo.
The pit lane has opened up and the grid in its correct order as it was qualified yesterday is now following out behind the safety car, and this is obviously how they have to run and to get a feel for the track and have a look around the track as well, get a view of where there's maybe any standing water. But Alan, I think most of that really quite deep standing water we saw a little bit when they decided to red flag, that most of that's gone now.
Yes, it has, and we have to remember this circuit has got a lot of elevation change. It also got a lot of camber as well on the roads, and so the water will flow into that, and that's what we saw before was there was a lot of water that was just flowing to one side of the circuit and then running down against the curbs. But it looks actually pretty reasonable. Well, in fact, it looks better than reasonable. It looks ready to go and start racing.
It does indeed.
I'm still looking for that message, standing or rolling start. We still haven't had that communication that the sporting regulations say should be happening. About this point, the teams will be told standing start or rolling start. And you can sit on board live and exclusive with Charles Leclerc here. Well, through the tunnel, it's always going to be a bit dry. But as we come out of the tunnel, this is one of the very wet spots. The lights are still on the safety car. It is still very wet there. Be a bit lively into the corner. But it looks raceable to me.
Yeah, it does look raceable. I agree with you there. No doubt about it. Just looking at pit stops, 2.23 seconds, the fastest so far this year by Ferrari. So they're in good shape. Well, they have been in good shape. But as we've been saying, pit stops here at Monaco are particularly challenging with the lack of space in the pit lane. And when you've got conditions like this, of course, predicting which tyre you're going to go for. Now, we do have a yellow. Oh, we've got a Williams. It's Latifi who has managed to hit the wall down at... what was Lowe's hairpin. It's changed, the hotel name has changed over the years, but thankfully, let's just have a look here. Oh my goodness.
Gaetan, the car just didn't turn. I just crashed into the hairpin.
Oh, and that was one of the Aston Martins as well, bashing the wall. That was Stroll. So Lance Stroll, who I think that would be okay, Alan, don't you? That was a bit of a sideways impact, hopefully no damage.
Yeah, maybe a slightly altered the steering or the camber or something, but fundamentally the car will continue. But it just shows how slippery it actually is, and tyre temperatures is getting cooler. Williams coming into the pits preparing for a stop.
A little touch on the front right. Just check.
Copy, we're checking.
It's okay.
Yeah, copy. You've got a right rear puncture.
Oh, right rear puncture, so I was wrong there, I'm afraid. He has meant some damage, so they got a right rear puncture. Sensors are so valuable these days, Alan.
Yeah, they are, but this will be actually a limited penalty for him because he was 18th anyway, and also with the fact Latifi's coming into the pits, then it'll only drop him back one position.
We've got news. It will be a rolling start. The safety car will enter the pit, so it will not be a stationary start. They will not be lining up on the grid, Sam, will they? They will actually be in the order that they are in behind the safety car, which will make it even harder for anyone to overtake into turn one.
Yeah, and this won't be like a NASCAR or IndyCar start. It's not 2x2, it's all in line.
It's definitely slippery out here, but track's good.
So Lewis Hamilton, who's experienced this before, I wonder how much he's looking forward to this. Starting down in 8th place on the grid, but maybe some opportunities.
Yeah, some opportunities already been rolling the dice. My timing screen, I don't know if I can trust it quite right, but I think the Red Bulls have opted to go on the intermediate tyre. I'm just trying to see if that is accurate. If so, that's a big roll of the dice.
Let's listen in to more radio.
Yeah, absolutely no grip.
No grip, he says, and that's certainly the comments that we are generally getting there as we see the drivers now beginning to build up. Alan?
I think the Red Bulls are on the same tyre, blue sidewall tyre.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. I was going to say that didn't look quite right. The data system is telling us that Red Bull and Alfa Romeo are on the Inters. They're not, but they're building up for this rolling start. It's like a normal safety restart. We're back to green.
Green flag. We are about to go racing in Monaco, round 7 of the 2022 Formula One World Championship, being led gently initially by Charles Leclerc. But who is going to last on this very slippery surface? We are racing, and look at the sliding that's going on, even down the straight as they head down towards Saint-Denis. They've got to brake early and try and make the corner. Can they all do that? He's through. Leclerc, Sainz, then the two Red Bulls in the same order. Perez ahead of Verstappen. Lando Norris has got through safely, but we will be keeping our eyes open for anybody hitting the barrier. Remember, both Latifi and Stroll made contact with barriers even on the formation lap. But Charles Leclerc, Alan, is just holding on up front at the moment.
Yeah, he's got a clear view ahead of him. It's important that he got through the first corner, as now there's a few pit callers as well, and that is definitely an unsafe release there by Aston Martin. Lucky that the Williams didn't collect it, but now Charles Leclerc just comes down to the bottom of the circuit, got a clear time ahead of him, and Carlos Sainz is just holding back Perez and then Verstappen.
And some were switching onto intermediates. I wonder if Gasly was doing that. It could be worth the risk for Gasly because he was so far back, having had such a disappointing time in qualifying. He was very unlucky with the timing of red flags, and I wonder they may well have gone on to intermediates. Up front, you've got Charles Leclerc from Carlos Sainz, our top two, and Leclerc's the one who's got to find the way around a little bit, out in front. Everyone else will be watching from behind to see where there's grip and where there isn't.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, you can see on the screen the tyre graphic is showing that both Red Bulls are on intermediate tyres. I don't think that is correct. I think they'd switched that out. I think they are on full wets. Alan will get a good look at this.
Yeah, just coming past on the warming up lap, everybody was on the full wets at the time, but now they've got a couple of pit callers for those intermediates, as we spoke about.
So now those front-running teams have to think about this. They will be looking at the lap times of the drivers on the intermediates to see if they're still in the mix there somewhere. But what they might all decide to do, these front runners, is stay on wets for a long time and then go straight to slicks. Who knows?
I mean, ultimately this is about not spending time in the pits at this point. There is more rain on the way probably, so nobody wants to stop. The only reason you'd stop for inters at this point, but you can see a dry line up there
already.
Yeah, and that is going to start eating up the wet tyres. We are going to see that puddle hunting starting quite soon, but it's just so slippy off the line, I think.
Yeah, very, very demanding and so easy to make a mistake. And I'm driving Monaco. Well, let's just listen to Bottas first.
Plan C question.
Yes. I would root for that. Pretty stuck here.
Okay.
Pretty stuck here, says Bottas. He's down in 12th place at the moment. No real gains or losses amongst the front runners from qualifying.
Plan C is pretty obvious for Alfa Romeo. They're down. They're out of position. They're not in the points. Stick on a set of intermediates early. Get back up to the back of the snake of cars. Then everybody else pits for intermediates. You could be on for a really big points finish if you do that, particularly if there's a virtual safety car or a full safety car.
Interestingly, Gasly's just done the same lap time, almost the same lap time as Leclerc, who is fastest out in front, but he's got clear air in front of him, so that helps. So Gasly's done a very similar lap time on the intermediate tyre, so that may be working, Alan.
Yeah, certainly. We'll see it very, very soon because people will react to it. Here's Hamilton.
Conditions when you can.
It's definitely slippery, and it's drying pretty quick, I'll say.
Drying pretty quick, says Lewis, so all of this is going to be a factor in deciding what to do. You're watching Yuki Tsunoda and Bottas. Now this was Pierre Gasly, on the intermediates a moment ago, very, very nearly hit the wall. And then another lock-up on that right front as he came down to the chicane.
And that is the issue with the intermediate tyre. Yes, there is a dry line, but it's not all the way around the circuit. The intermediates, it's probably still a bit too wet for them, but you're going to need them soon.
No more rain for the next 20 to 30 minutes.
Now he can concentrate. Verstappen's just done the fastest lap there, Alan, and he's really getting quite close to teammate Perez.
Yeah, he is. He's pushing, and I've got to say, Lando Norris is still hanging on to the back of them very, very well. Mick Schumacher has actually done that. He's popped into the pits in 17th and put on the intermediates. So now we've got Gasly and Schumacher, as well as Stroll and Latifi on those inters.
On board with Max Verstappen, and he's getting closer to the back of his teammate Checo Sergio Perez. Verstappen, the winner of this race last year, when Leclerc didn't get to start the race from pole position, didn't get to race at all, had to watch, and did see his teammate Carlos Sainz finish second.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a case of to get past safely in these conditions, it's going to have to be a radio call to Sergio Perez, and so therefore Verstappen's got to keep the pressure on behind him and not do that, not hit curbs, which then potentially puts him into the barrier. But he's got to just keep that pressure on, I'm sure, be on the radio as well, because otherwise there's too much risk to try to overtake even your teammate in these situations.
Okay, Schumacher, Gasly and Latifi have pitted for Inters. It doesn't look particularly easy though, and they are no quicker than Stroll, who pitted for a wet and has clear air.
Good information for Ricciardo, good information for us as well, Sam.
But it's not very good information though. Pierre Gasly was 1 second faster than Lance Stroll in the first sector on the last lap by. So Pierre Gasly is picking up the pace significantly. He's a full second faster than Guan Yu Zhou in front of him as well. In fact, the only cars that are quicker than Pierre Gasly at the moment are some of those front runners who are in clearer air. So actually Gasly is picking up the pace, and they need to be careful of that, because he's going to start creeping into the pit window of the top 10.
Vettel has lost position to Ocon, I noticed. So Vettel is down in 10th place, Ocon in 9th. So Vettel, one of the ones who has lost out in these conditions. Albon up to 15th now, and Zhou, who's made up 4 places from the back in the other Alfa Romeo. Good lap from Gasly there. You're just pointing out, Sam. Yeah, he's just set the fastest lap by a couple of tenths over Charles Leclerc, but by quite a big margin over everybody else. So the Inters are kind of working, Alan.
But interestingly, he wasn't the fastest in any sector, but he was fastest overall on the lap. And so therefore, it's just as a general perspective, it looks like different cars are quick in different areas, but Gasly definitely the Inters. And now that they're starting to build temperature as well, and he's got a 10-12 second gap up to Zhou, then I'm sure he's going to catch that very, very quickly, because he's about 3-4 seconds a lap faster than Zhou in the Alpha right now.
This is a real little battle developing. You've got Tsunoda, car 22 is in the AlphaTauri. We're getting Vettel into the pits right now. This is very much a strategic call, and I tell you what, Aston Martin were very strong on strategy here last year, both with Vettel and with Stroll, and Vettel is heading in. You just saw it, and so is Tsunoda. So both an Aston Martin and an AlphaTauri heading in.
Everybody's going to have to stop pretty soon for the intermediates, because these cars, who you may think are out of contention for big points, are very rapidly eating into the pit windows of the front runners. You need to look at the gap from the first car on track, Charles Leclerc, looking back down to Pierre Gasly. He's 41 seconds behind Charles Leclerc at the end of the last lap. That gap will be about the same at the end of this lap, but it's going to start coming down rapidly. And as soon as it gets into that 20-second area, well, Charles Leclerc, if he pits, will be behind Pierre Gasly.
Interestingly, Alonso is not delivering the same pace as Norris and Russell. So Norris and Russell are running 5th and 6th at the moment, but Alonso has dropped back a little bit. He's some 3 seconds behind, and then Hamilton is another couple of seconds behind Alonso in 8th position, 9th place for Ocon, and now up into 10th. With Vettel having made a pit stop, we've got Valtteri Bottas up into 10th ahead of Magnussen and Daniel Ricciardo. So Daniel got that information from the team. He's not decided to come in as yet, and he is still outside of the points, down in 12th place. But I tell you, potential mistakes are so easy. Look at the little slide from Carlos Sainz there, Alan, as he accelerated out of the last couple of corners.
Yeah, you've got to be very, very careful. Here's Verstappen.
How are conditions, Max?
Drying, but still a bit tricky on these tyres.
Yeah, you can see that.
It's an interesting one. Yes, from the driver's point of view, it's tricky on these tyres, but he doesn't have another reference because he's never driven the Inter. So the team have got to go on the people that have jumped to the intermediate tyre. And right now, you'd say lap time-wise, they're very, very similar. However, from Gasly's point of view, his is only going to get quicker, whereas the actual full wet is only going to get slower as it dries up. Right now, though, the first four have to stay where they are. They've got it quite clearly. The risk point is from Norris, Russell, Alonso back, because the quicker, as Sam was saying, the quicker that Gasly goes, the closer he gets, and then as soon as the pit stop comes, then they will be behind.
Oh, Max being a bit more oversteery than even the Ferraris there as they head on around, but he's still in there in fourth place, chasing after his teammate.
In pure time terms, Pierre Gasly is now battling with Lewis Hamilton for 8th position in this Grand Prix. However, Pierre Gasly is about to start having a slightly harder job of work. He's 4 seconds off the back of Guan Yu Zhou, but he's probably catch him by the end of this lap. The pace differential between them is more than that. However, then he's going to start getting into the traffic and having to overtake in Monaco, and that will mean going offline on the intermediate tyres, and that could be very, very risky for the AlphaTauri.
Yes, because going offline means going onto a wetter section normally, and if it's the intermediate, of course, it doesn't clear the water quite as effectively as the full wet tyre. So Charles Leclerc with a 3-second advantage. Actually, it's just come under 3 seconds now. Sainz in second place. Then a gap of 2 seconds to Sergio Perez with Verstappen, just sitting in there a second and a half or so behind his teammate. Then there is a bit more of a gap to Lando Norris, running in 5th place with just a second and a half between the two British runners, Lando Norris and George Russell. You're on board with George Russell, so that is Lando Norris that you can see up ahead. Let's just see what happened to George at the chicane, Alan. Didn't work out quite right.
No, certainly went in, locked up that left front, and then just aborted the corner. There was no way he was going to make it, and came through. There was basically, it was a get out of jail free card with the fact that he could run over that section of what is not actually track and still sit behind Lando Norris. But looking at it right now, they're about 3-4 seconds a lap faster than they were at the beginning of this race. And that was only 7 laps ago. So the circuit is getting quicker and quicker and drying up pretty quickly. There's new pink sectors, meaning the fastest sector of the race so far, coming up every single lap.
So the big question, Sam, will be who will be the first to switch to slicks? I know we're not there yet, but it's a question.
Lando, Russell's been told to push up to you. Plan B, plan B.
I'm 100% pace, mate.
I just don't think we're anywhere near slick conditions because of it's the same problem Gasly's about to face with Guan Yu Zhou. I hope we get to see that quite soon, because going offline you can see the puddles of water, but you can see those 2 tram lines on the circuit where it is dry. There's no spray coming off the tyres in the swimming pool complex, and that tells you that the track is pretty much completely dry where the wheels are. But as soon as a driver goes offline, you'll see the spray coming up, and you see how much they're moving around on the rear. There is no grip, and this is what we're going to see from Gasly.
Yeah, well, certainly in comparison to what they did in qualifying, we're used to the race pace being quite a lot slower than the qualifying pace, 4 or 5 seconds off, but they're about 24 seconds off at the moment, so it is a big gap in terms of lap time pace compared to what it was in the dry in qualifying. And as you say, it doesn't feel as though we're anywhere near the slicks, Alan.
Yeah, the reason for the big lap time delta, because normally it's 10-12 seconds, is the fact that this is all corners and no straights. It's the least wide open throttle circuit on the calendar, and you're effectively only just turning for the majority of the lap. But you can see there, Gasly is definitely quicker, but he's blocked up behind him. And it's going to need Zhou to make a mistake, or alternatively to lose traction, and for Gasly then to have a real safe run to overtake.
Yeah, you're right, and Zhou had a little bit of a slide then, but wasn't an opportunity for Gasly to get through. Back with our front runners, I've got a yellow flag in sector 1, Latifi down at turn 1. So Latifi again, he had a mishap earlier. I think he's got going again. Yes, he has. So 2 mishaps for Latifi already. He's had a lot of mishaps so far this year. Hopefully he hasn't actually damaged the car. You just saw Albon, his teammate, the other Blue Williams, going through in 13th place. And then it is that battle we're talking about here between Zhou and Gasly as they come down towards the chicane. Zhou in the red and white Alfa Romeo, Gasly behind in the Alpha Tauri. Can Gasly find a way past? He's certainly got a good exit. but there are so few spaces around here into back, for example. That's where Maldonado had a big shunt some years ago.
You saw it just there. It was actually some smart thinking there from Pierre Gasly. He went offline, thought about having a run on the in the run into the swimming pool complex. The spray started coming off the tyres, and he knew he had no grip under braking.
Alan, talk us through what it's like watching this on board.
Well, now just trying to position yourself, because he's definitely quicker and he's got more traction out of the corners than the Alfa Romeo up ahead of him. And so in that respect, he's just trying to position the car, take Joe offline a little bit so that it compromises him even further, and then he'll try and get a run. But he's got to be patient. That's the thing right now, patience.
Albon has just gone off. We just saw the yellow flags in the background there. And Albon has lost a place to Vettel as a result. So Vettel, who made that early pit stop, interestingly, he will be behind Gasly. He's a little way behind, but of course Gasly here is being held up at the moment. So in the background, in a little while, they just see the Aston Martin of Vettel appearing in the background. He will catch this pairing pretty quickly, won't he?
And he's 3 seconds a lap faster than what this pairing was able to do in the last lap, so he'll catch them within a lap.
But then, once he's
got the same problem.
Yeah, the same problem of getting past. Now, you're on board with Pierre Gasly. This is one of the helmet camera views. This is fantastic to see, isn't it?
It's excellent coming through the tunnel, just getting close to the barrier on the right, but he's too far behind to have a lunge. He's just got to keep that pressure. There's a mistake.
So a mistake from Zhou, and they may well have to give the place back.
He'll probably have to give that place back, give Gasly that place, because he held the position. Gasly could have argued that he had a run at him. It's a bit close. Now, race control have said to the drivers, it's up to them whether they decide to do it. If they don't, they will just get hit with a penalty. So it's going to be an interesting one to see if he does give it back.
Fastest lap for Charles Leclerc so far, but yeah, you've acted as steward here many times. Alan, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, he was ahead when he went into the braking area, and he came out ahead, so there was no actual long distance time gain out of it. There was clear, though, he was never going to make the corner, and so he aborted very, very early. But Joe looks all over the place. He's trying to defend in areas, to be honest, he doesn't need to, and the rear of the car is so unstable in braking. But Sebastian Vettel, not quite, it was quick on that particular lap. It was only 1.5 seconds that he was able to gain on it. So not joining up to the back of the grid as much as I expected at this stage.
There you are, riding on board with Gasly. Is he going to go for the lunge down the inside? I think he is, into Mirabeau. He's got the line as long as he doesn't hit the barrier on the exit. Gasly's gone through, and there we are, seeing our first proper overtake of the race that we've seen. I know that Ocon did get past Vettel earlier, but that is a good move. Alan, talk us through it.
Yeah, he just got a nice run out of Casino down into Mirabeau on the inside, and I think that it was realised the game was up quite early and let him go through. But it just shows the decisiveness. He's got confidence in the car, where Joe doesn't have that same confidence. Now Daniel Ricciardo, he's next up. That's going to be a slightly, I would say, different game, if you ask me.
Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is not flying along, I have to say. He's some 5 seconds behind the car that's up ahead of him, Kevin Magnussen. So Charles Leclerc is just punching in those fastest laps at the moment. That was around 3/10 faster than teammate Carlos Sainz. Ferrari still running 1 and 2. And there's another little battle with, as you can see, as Gasly now really putting the pressure on Ricciardo. And Vettel is now trying to get past Zhou in the background. So you've got 2 separate battles going on here as they head down towards Saint-Devote. I don't think Gasly's going to be close enough to Ricciardo here. Look at Vettel in the background. Very difficult to find the space.
Yeah, now the intermediates have came into their own. We see that there's now tram lines of dryness on the circuit. It's not just less wet, it's actually dry, and that's meaning that the full wet tyre is going out of its working window and the intermediate's right in its working window. So I would expect that we're going to see Gasly make short shift of Daniel Ricciardo. Not sure where on the circuit it's going to be, because Daniel definitely is going to fight for his position, but normally he should be able to get it done.
Well, let's wait and see if he's going to take a bit of a risk here. Let's listen in to Perez.
Is that an Inter now?
Okay, copy, Checo.
Yeah, so of the leaders, which of the leaders is going to make a pit stop now to go on to the intermediate tyre? You can really see the track drying up, Sam. There's a proper dry line beginning to happen.
Yeah, I'm looking at the gaps for the leading bunch. Charles Leclerc, if he pitted now, he'd come out behind Lando Norris and lose that track position to the others. But if he can get slightly more fast laps in, which is what he's trying to do. He'll be able to leave the pits ahead of Lando Norris, which means when the other three, Sainz, Perez and Verstappen, stop, they would come out behind Leclerc. So it's really crucial steps here.
Gasly getting alongside Ricciardo. He's done it. Oh, that was sheer traction, wasn't it, Alan? I mean, that was brilliantly done.
Absolute traction, because now those wets are out of their window, and therefore Daniel Ricciardo just couldn't get the power down. It's like driving on ice, and then Gasly had the temperature in the tyre and just out-accelerated him. It's definitely Inter's now, and so if you're in a situation like Sainz or Perez, you can look to the undercut towards the guys that are on the wets up ahead of you.
Well, good stuff, very interesting. This is the on-board view. He got alongside, a little oversteer initially, and he was still having to control it, but Vettel still hasn't found a way past Zhou as yet. So you've got Ricciardo in the orange McLaren, chased by Zhou in the Alpha, then Vettel, former winner here at Monaco, of course, but can he get back up the order after qualifying in the top 10 and making that early pit stop? Is it going to work out for him? We shall have to wait and see. And of the leaders, Sam, still haven't seen any of them in for their intermediate.
This is all about that gap back to Norris. Let's see Mick Schumacher, though, on the right.
Yeah, he's battling away with Albon at the moment.
We're going to go straight to dry. Okay, understood.
Yeah, now that makes sense, doesn't it? We did talk about this, possibly going straight from full wet onto slick, so you stay out there a bit longer on the wet when you might be losing out to people on the intermediates, but then you switch to the slicks.
I mean, that is incredibly brave. It's still very damp off the line, and you're going to have to go offline.
Yeah, but he didn't say when he was going to do it. Sainz has just done the fastest lap of the race at 32.995. And so with that sort of performance, he's obviously generating the temperature into that wet tyre, and he's able to keep that momentum going forward for, say, another 6 or 7 laps, get him up to lap 20. And then, yeah, maybe it is a little bit, maybe it is possible at that point.
It's looking to me like Charles Leclerc now has the opportunity to come into the pits and get back out in, well, when the other three take out, they will come out behind Leclerc. He needs to stop soon, though.
Yeah, no rear for some reason.
So that time is still not looking too bad. Let's just do everything we can.
Sounds like they want to stay out until they put it onto slicks.
Pierre Gasly's laps now 1:31.2 against the fastest. The lap times being set by Charles Leclerc are 1:33.3. He's so much faster. This is why the opportunity to stop for Charles Leclerc is right now. However, do you go for the slicks or do you go for the wet? And is there more rain coming?
I would say it's a little bit too early to gamble on the actual slicks just at this moment in time, because as well, if he's into slicks, then he's going to come out into traffic at some point, and then you'll be in a very difficult position because the temperature would drop on those slick tyres. You'd have to go for the softs as well there, Sam.
Mick Schumacher still putting a lot of pressure on Alex Albon. Gasly now has caught his next rival, which is Magnussen. Hamilton has pitted. Lewis Hamilton comes into the pits, and is he going for slicks? No, he's going on to intermediates. Now that is an interesting one. So he did say, I've got no grip on the rears, so he has gone for intermediates now, but we are thinking or hearing that maybe some drivers up front will stay out there even longer on the wets and then try and switch to slicks. You see how slippery it is still in this area, Alan? Very, very greasy.
Yeah, but I think there's a big difference with the cars that are here and the cars that are right at the front, being the two Ferraris and also the Red Bulls. It is greasy, but with the extra downforce that leading cars have, it just helps so much to be able to keep the temperature into those tyres and keep them working.
This is Bottas from Magnussen and Gasly. It's getting tight.
And that's what Hamilton's pit stop there was all about. Mercedes saw these two Ferrari-powered cars in front of the AlphaTauri, realised he was blocked. They were going to slow down the AlphaTauri, but if Hamilton didn't pit at that point, Gasly was going to get him when he came back out on track.
Okay, let's listen to Perez. He's being told to make a pit stop. So this is crucial. The first of the front runners to come into the pit. Look at the tyres that they're going to put on, and they are intermediates. So Sergio Perez, the first of that lead group to make a pit stop.
Ferrari going to have to react to this with Charles Leclerc. He's going to have to stop next time by and get in the pits and get a new set of boots on, because if he doesn't, Perez is going to massively undercut the Monegasque driver.
On board with Sebastian Vettel on the right-hand side, as Perez has been passed by Lando Norris. Is he going to be passed by Russell? I don't think he is. Vettel still trying to find some space out there on the right to get alongside and get past Zhou. But Zhou Guanyu is holding off pretty well at the moment, I have to say. Remember, this is his first Formula 1 race at Monaco, but he has raced here in Formula 2. It is his debut season, the first Chinese driver to be doing a full season of Formula 1, which is wonderful, but it's not proving easy right now. Vettel the outside.
Let's in for inters, focus in lap.
I'm not sure it's the right call. It's nearly ready for dry, yeah?
Okay,
nearly ready for dry.
Come back to you.
I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Discussion, Alan, between team and driver, always fascinating if Sainz isn't agreeing with what the team are saying. He is coming in though, so let's see what tyres he puts on. In the meantime, Gasly almost getting alongside Magnussen, but Magnussen blocked it fairly and there was no space for Gasly to get through. Listen in on Sainz.
Stay out, stay out.
Oh, so they told him to pit, now they've told him to stay out. It's all getting a bit confusing already, isn't it?
Yeah, at the end of the day, though, the driver sees one part of the picture and he feels it. Norris has got a radio. Box for Lando Norris, so definitely there's a lot of action. He's now into the pit lane in front of me.
There was a yellow briefly too, but I don't know who it was for as yet. But Lando Norris into the pits then. Let's see how the pit stop goes for McLaren. They've been doing a good job this year in the pits, and that looked pretty effective to me. On your right-hand screen, yeah, 2.3 seconds is good. Vettel still pushing on.
I think my front wing's broken.
Oh dear. Presumably that was the yellow, Sam. We saw a brief yellow, and presumably it was Mick Schumacher's hit a barrier or hit another car or something.
Yeah, he was locked in quite a battle with Alex Albon actually in the race control, with just noting that one of the drivers didn't give the other driver an advantage back. What we're seeing here? I
think that's the battle. Yeah, it's Ocon battling with Hamilton, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it is. Hamilton is absolutely flying around. 1:30.2 his last lap.
Just turned in on me, man. I don't know if my wing's busted.
I think it was wheel to wheel. Yeah, I think it was wheel to wheel. It was right rear to left front. But he was lucky there.
Vettel has just got past Zhou, so on that right-hand side of the screen, so you've got all these battles to look at, because you're looking on the left at Ocon versus Hamilton, which is crucial. And into the pits then comes our race leader, Charles Leclerc. Remember, he has never finished the Monaco Grand Prix. He comes in from the lead. Oh, interesting how he stopped. He stopped actually a fraction early.
Red Bull behind as well. One of the Red Bulls is in, and that's going to be intermediate tyres as well.
So he's going to come back out. Let's have a look. Perez made the earlier pit stop, of course, and that is Perez, is it, going past?
That was Perez taking the lead there, because that's what I was saying. They waited too long to roll the dice, and he pitted too late and let Perez go. They should have pitted a full lap earlier. The data was so clear on this, and I think Ferrari are in a quandary about inters or slicks, so they should have just pitted for inters.
But this is a race that can still go on, because they're going to presumably go to slicks at some point. Russell getting a black and white flag for track limits. George is still running reasonably strongly at the moment. He's in 5th position. Just had a quick look through there. But this means that Perez is ahead of Leclerc, but the race is being led by Carlos Sainz, because he's not made a pit stop yet. But of those that have made pit stops, it is Perez who took the advantage.
Well, it's quite clear now Sainz has to go straight to slicks. He cannot come in because he's just going to lose so much time. But Sam, you're absolutely right. I think they should have split the strategy. They're probably more focusing on the whole Sainz discussion as opposed to necessarily what they were looking at with Charles Leclerc, who seemed to be the quickest guy on circuit though. But just one lap was enough to actually switch it round the other way.
Yeah, it was a real strategic boo-boo there by Ferrari.
Sick, man. He just put me in the wall, man. I don't know if the car's damaged, man. I'll do.
Okay, Colin may have picked up a little bit from end plate damage, but it looks okay.
So Hamilton's getting very frustrated in trying to get past Ocon at this stage. You're on board with Sergio Perez, so he's second on the road, but he's made his pit stop. Albon is just rejoining.
Sainz has absolutely, Ferrari have absolutely blown this. Sainz is completely hamstrung by this. He's going to lose so many positions. Max Verstappen is now clearly in front of Sainz, and George Russell is now driving into Sainz's pit window as well. Those wet tyres, they needed to change them much sooner.
Yeah, but he's got a 7-second gap, so when Perez comes up to him, he's still got to overtake him for then Perez to have the advantage. If they both then have to switch to slicks, it may be a different game.
Look at this, Hamilton really trying to get past Esteban Ocon. Ocon's still on wet, so he's got very little grip. Hamilton on intermediates, he's got more grip. But can he get alongside? No, not down into Sandovot, he can't. But up the hill, you can see how much more performance he's got. But it's so easy to block here, Alan, isn't it?
It is, but there's a bit of damage to the left front wing end plate of Lewis Hamilton's car, which is certainly not going to help. It wasn't designed to be flapping in the way that it is, as you can see it bouncing around. Hamilton's so much quicker, but Ocon's just putting his car in the position that doesn't allow it. It's going to have to be an aggressive Lewis Hamilton to come past, because Ocon's been aggressively defending.
This is like the old days of Senna versus Mansell for the win, when Mansell had fresh tyres on in the dry and was in second place chasing down Senna, who did a brilliant job of blocking him, and he's got a chance to get alongside into the tunnel. No, can't do it. So can he do anything down towards the chicane here? Ocon is staying out wide, but there isn't the space for him to get alongside. So once again, Ocon holding on to 8th place for the moment. Another yellow going on, and that was that. We'll have to see. That's Ricciardo just coming back on again.
They were hard tyres.
Albon it was, who was off at turn 1.
Albon is on hard tyres as well. The slick tyres have come out. They were slick tyres.
Right, so he's on slicks. Here comes Hamilton trying to go around the outside. Can he now cut back in? No, he can't. Ocon staying out there. Now it's the exit of the last corner, trying to get the run. You're looking right back at Lewis Hamilton now.
Has any of his moves been investigated?
Nothing at the moment, Lewis.
And of course it feels unfair when you're following someone like this, Alan, but the point is here at Monaco, you kind of put the car in the middle of the road. It is so difficult to get alongside.
They're fighting for 8th position. It's not as if it's out the points. This is actually the points. And Ocon's trying to do what Sainz is going to do, is go straight to that slick tyre. So he certainly doesn't want to give away any position, because he will be fighting with Lewis Hamilton later on in the race. Hamilton round outside, that doesn't usually work round there.
Risky, yeah, I was just thinking it's so easy to get pushed into the barrier. So Sainz has been told to make a pit stop now. Bottas has just made a pit stop. The race leader is in. So Carlos Sainz takes the Ferrari into the pits. Now, what tyre is he going to be doing? Leclerc's in. It's a Ferrari double pit stop. They're going for slicks.
Mercedes are also getting ready. Mercedes are getting ready with slicks as well on the hard tyre.
Wow, he's gone on to the hard tyre. I think Sainz was on the medium. Am I right, Sam?
I think they were both on the hard. I'll tell you in a second.
Two hards.
Okay, both hard. All right. So that's fascinating to go out on the hard compound tyre when the track is still damp.
Russell and Alonso are in the pits as well.
Okay, so a lot of pit stops going on right now, and the outlet on these slick tyres, very demanding, obviously.
What
Oh, he's upset. He is so upset, Alan, because he now knows that Carlos Sainz is ahead of him, having to make a second pit stop. He is being led by his teammate, but you've got both Red Bulls at the moment ahead of both Ferraris, as Ocon has finally come in, releasing Hamilton.
All the drivers who've had slick tyres on have been struggling to get around the lap without going off, though. They've all been absolutely struggling. However, Red Bull needs to react here, because the Ferrari pace is going to be really good if they can keep it on the line, because Lando Norris is now battling with Max Verstappen on track. Sergio Perez is in danger from both Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc as well. They're going to have to stop or just try and tough this one out.
Red Bull are ready for one of the drivers, Perez box.
So here we go, Sergio Perez, race leader as he comes in, and Verstappen, they're doing a double stop as well, just like Ferrari. So where are the Ferraris now? I'm not sure they're going to be close enough. This is going to be interesting. Verstappen comes in. This could be a great shot for Sergio Perez as he comes out of the pits. Look in the background, the Ferraris are only just coming out of the last corner now, I believe. So Sergio Perez on the left-hand side, is he going to retain the lead? It's looking promising. There you can see the Ferrari heading down of Carlos Sainz, just going through Saint-Devote, but Perez has come out comfortably in front of him. This is great news for Sergio Perez, and Max Verstappen now sliding his way out. They've got to get used to it on the slicks.
Yeah, it's going to be hot tyres versus cold tyres, but Ferrari have blown this strategy.
Look at how Carlos Sainz has got the grip in his tyres that Perez has not got, Alan.
Yeah, now this is the problem for Leclerc. He needs to try to get past as quickly as possible, as we're looking at Perez just braking, coming down into the corner. This has got to be the lap. It's got to be now into the chicane if any of the Ferraris want to get back any of the Red Bulls.
So you've got two battles going on here. You've got Perez, Sainz, and then you've got Verstappen-Leclerc, the battle for the Drivers' Championship. This is the Verstappen-Leclerc battle, and Leclerc was the one who really put Verstappen under some serious pressure just there. but up ahead of them, Sainz is very close to Perez as well. But, and one of the Williams going straight over, but that's not really going to affect things too much here, I don't think. Gasly has now pitted as well, and he made that early stop onto intermediates. This is all heating up wonderfully well, and they're going to come into some traffic as well.
It looked like a good strategy for Alpha.
Oh, it's all getting a bit tight down there as well, isn't it? Mick Schumacher battling with Joe, and now they're being caught by the leaders as Perez and Sainz. That's the 1-2 battle right behind. Oh, Sainz! My goodness, he had a big moment, but he somehow gathered it together. Oh, we'll have to have another look at that, Alan, but that looked like a huge moment to me.
Yeah, it's just wheel spin. He went offline because he was trying to go wide to get a run on Sergio Perez, got on his left rear onto the wet, and that was it. Just wheel spin in probably fourth gear. Big snap oversteer, and definitely the skill of his father came through the DNA there, and he was able to catch it.
But what's going on, Sam? There's an investigation, something to do with the incident with Perez coming out of the pit.
Yeah, we're going to need to see a replay of that. Did he cross the yellow line?
Ah, here.
Yes. Just on exit, the last part of it, left front wheel.
That's Max, though. That's Max, not Perez.
That is very definitely Max crossing the yellow line as well.
Verstappen two behind.
Wow.
Yeah, stay cool.
So, this is certainly hotting up, isn't it? Perez leads, Sainz in second, Verstappen third, Leclerc fourth.
You're not allowed to cross that yellow line on the exit of the pits. It's interesting that the investigation was for Perez. That was clearly Verstappen's car. So I wonder if we're going to see another message in a minute correcting the first one, or they both did that. That could be a penalty for both of these Red Bulls. This is far from over. But Ferrari have really rolled the gamble badly there. They stayed out too long. They got this strategy wrong. If they don't win this Grand Prix, the race strategist is going to have a very long, dismal evening.
Well, Leclerc down in fourth place, having started from pole and leading the early laps quite comfortably, finds himself down in fourth place, having made 2 pit stops, unlike most of those around him, some of them around him making 1 stop. Red Bull then made that quick switch to slicks as well. Clever strategy from Red Bull, you have to say. They've done a fantastic job so far. Let's see if it all holds out. So lapping some of the slower cars, and Sainz is actually being approached by Max Verstappen, so he's not, that mistake that he made, he managed to hold it, but it's dropped him away from Perez, who's now pulling away, to be fair, and it's all battling up behind him. Stroll has now been told to make a pit stop, and Lando Norris, who's running in 6th place, has just set the fastest lap. Now this was the moment, Alan.
Yeah, it just got a huge tank slap and oversteer there. It had to be very, very quick. Very frankly, when I saw it the first time, I thought he was going to be in the wall. So it's a great recovery by him, and he needs to sort of take a lap just to get the breath back and then start to build it back up again. But Sergio Perez has got the speed at the moment. You said there about Norris having the fastest lap. Lewis Hamilton then immediately beat it.
Well, we've got a penalty just come through from race control for Alex Albon. He cut the chicane and didn't give the place back, so they have doled out a 5-second penalty for that. They felt he should have given that position back. It doesn't really matter, he's running in 19th anyway.
Yep, so we saw that on F1 Live and exclusive, the Albon situation, and he's got the 5-second penalty as a result. So let's just take another look, see if this was the right rear.
Yeah,
wasn't quite what he wanted. Punctured right rear. So bad news for Albon. Things are not going well for Williams generally. They're 2 cars right down at the back of the field, going well for Red Bull at the moment. They're running 1st and 3rd.
Now, something we haven't really seen just a few laps ago, Kevin Magnussen retired from this Grand Prix.
Okay, no, that's something I hadn't realised. So 1 car out, and that's a shame for Kevin Magnussen, who's done well here in the past, but it hasn't worked out for him this weekend. The other Haas car still in the run is Mick Schumacher, 17th for now. So they're coming up behind Vettel here already. Vettel is running Stroll. We're up behind Stroll here. Listen to Verstappen.
I smell something burning, but I don't know from which car.
Something burning he can smell, but he doesn't know from which car.
Well, you can smell that sort of stuff, and when these cars burn, it is a very strong, acrid smell of carbon fibre, but not quite sure, which one it would. He's not running particularly closely, unless it's the Alfa Romeo in front of him. Aston Martin.
The yellow flag up, so whether somebody... that is Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher has hit the barrier incredibly hard. This could be a red flag. And Kevin Magnussen the disappointment for him as well, but that is a virtual safety car at the moment, but the car has split in half. You could see the back end of the car completely separate from the main section of the car, and the yellow flags are out, everybody being told to slow down, which they certainly will do.
Now, race control will be trying not to red flag this, but looking at the condition of that car, I suspect they may have to. If the red flag comes out, we've got 1 hour and 11 minutes to get back underway and get any more racing in, because we are on the clock on this Grand Prix.
Well, Alan, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think for a red flag, it'll be the barrier and debris. Here's some radio from Mick.
I'm okay, I just don't understand it.
Well, the good news is he's okay. He's not been hurt. He just says, I don't understand it. So there is the damage. My goodness, Sam, look at that. It's taken the whole rear section off the car. He's obviously hit that barrier hard.
He really has. Does give us a nice look at the rear suspension mounting points in the gearbox. You don't normally get to see those torsion bar locations. But yeah, he's really gone into something hard. That's the end of the accident. The accident started earlier on. So until we see it, I don't think we really understand it either.
Let's have a look at this, Alan. Oh, yeah, that was a bit strange.
Lost it early, but it's this impact here on the Tech Pro that's actually split off. To be honest with you, the G-force must have just been in the angle, because it couldn't have been high G at that level to split the car in half, though.
With the Tech Pro barrier massively displaced, you could see it on the previous angle. There you get a very clear point that with that watch company's advertising on it, you can see the barrier's been completely displaced. That needs to be moved back into position for racing to resume, but we're under a virtual safety car, not even a full safety car, which I find a little bit surprising.
It really snaps
here. We are on board.
Yeah. The way it let go there, odd,
it's like it locked the rears. Like it locked the rears or something, which is a surprise at that particular point, but it looked round on him very, very quickly.
We've gone to full safety car, so everybody will stack up behind the safety car. Thankfully, Mick is okay. Had a big shunt earlier this year in Saudi before the race itself, and wasn't able to do the race. Looks as though he's perfectly okay here, but it was a weird one, and as he reported on the radio.
On the starting grid, Gunther Steiner was asking Will Buxton to make it rain. I wonder if he's going to regret asking Will to do that. Will obviously delivered. Alex Albon, while we weren't looking, pitted and put on a set of medium tyres. That'll be interesting to see if the Williams can work its way back through the field, though he is one lap down on the front runners. The field has been lapped up to P13.
Let's listen in to Joe.
Is he okay?
Yeah, he's okay. Driver, okay.
And I can understand drivers being concerned, seeing the amount of damage, seeing the way the car has split like that. They would be concerned about their fellow drivers.
And the Haas team themselves, now they know their driver's okay, will be looking at that, and that's why there were long faces in the Haas garage. The cars have got to be shipped off to Azerbaijan fairly soon for another high-speed street, or for a high-speed street race rather than a low-speed street race. And we know the Haas team are up against it on spare parts. Mick Schumacher's crash earlier in the season meant he couldn't compete in a Grand Prix afterwards, and they were running low on monocoques. Now they've got their fourth monocoque out, but there is some pretty heavy damage at the rear end. That'll probably be a gearbox penalty, because I don't think that gearbox is going anywhere again. I'd love to get that in the studio and pull it apart though.
I bet you would, yes, I know you would love that. But the marshals, as ever, doing a fabulous job here at Monaco to get stuff out of the way. Over 600 marshals play their part over the course of a race weekend here at Monaco, and they are enthusiastic and very knowledgeable too in getting stuff done. But this is tricky. They've got the crane up there at that section. That's one of the great things about Monaco, is that they have very well positioned material for moving cars out of the way.
It's the second time this season we've seen a chassis split in half. Now that bit you saw the marshal pulling the gearbox and rear wheels along with were the mounting points that go directly to the back of that Ferrari power unit, which you can just see sticking out there. There's the exhaust, and you'll just see the turbocharger housing as well. Now that could have damaged the cylinder block as well, or the cylinder heads, and will write off that V6 power unit and probably the turbocharger, looking at how it's split. That could be another big hit for the Haas team, because they will lose some of those parts and probably pick up a penalty later in the season.
Lose some of the parts, but also remember this is under the cost cap as well, so all this damage is going to be a factor for them as well. And as you said, on the back of the crash earlier on in the season, certainly not ideal, but a very strange incident actually. It was just so quick, and like I said, it sounded like the rear locked up just as soon as he came through between the two parts of the swimming pool.
Now, we've actually got an exclusive angle of the accident that Mick Schumacher had just a few moments ago. They're obviously trying to repair the barrier. Let's have a look at this angle, guys. Oh, that's where you see the actual impact and how hefty it was and how fast the car was going, Alan. That's not a very pleasant way to come to a halt, is it?
No, it's the speed actually that you saw there. I think the impact wasn't high necessarily in G. That's why I'm surprised. It must have been the angle that ripped the car apart. But the speed was pretty ferocious. And just very glad that Mick has actually jumped out of the car. Here we have it again. See, it enters the left-hand side now.
Yeah, and even though that's Tech Pro barrier, so it does absorb some of the impact. It's well-designed stuff, but that was a very nasty accident for Mick Schumacher. Seeing it from another angle once again, by the looks of it, yeah, this is sort of more... It's the way the car breaks away here. So it's a very sudden breakaway, isn't it?
It's also quite early as well, because it's just on the exit of the right. It's not as if it's in the transition between the two parts of it. So it's actually very, very early. I just wonder whether the left rear was slightly wide at that point and just maybe the edge of it was onto the damper part of the circuit.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, as the car was split in half, now it's actually, well, it's quite pertinent that it's the safety improvements for the 2022 season. It came as a result of Romain Grosjean's Haas being split in half in Bahrain a while back ago, and these cars for this season have had significant improvements to the monocoque safety. They've got longer noses and more safety structures around that. The panels inside the cockpit are stiffer as well, so the cars are a lot safer than they were back in 2020, 2021, and that's one of the reasons they're so much heavier. But that weight should be a massive penalty round here at Monaco. I was looking at Charles Leclerc's unfinished qualifying lap earlier on today, and it looked to me, based on the simulation, he'd have qualified 6th last year.
Okay, Max, so once the race gets underway, we need to think about BBAL map 4 and looking after the rear slip under braking, long stint.
Yeah, I know, mate, but you know, it's easy to front lock in these conditions.
Understood. Yep. Key is to obviously complete a stint.
And no more rain expected until the end of the race. Everyone expected to go to the end.
Perfect.
Perfect, he says, because he's so unhappy. Alan.
Yeah, red flag, so they've actually now going to stop the race, and I presume that is due to the fact that after the accident, the work that needs to be done to the Tech Pro barrier.
I think it may be more than the Tech Pro barrier. Actually, behind that Tech Pro barrier, there's an Armco barrier, and it maybe that's been deformed, because you can see the marshals there. They arranged that barrier, that Tech Pro barrier, in a sort of safer barrier style, with a sort of horizontal section, then a longitudinal section, and that just absorbs a bit more energy. But it could be the barrier behind it's had a bit of a ding.
It could be, but now they're coming into the pit lane to stop. What's the regulations now under the red flag, Sam?
Yeah, teams can repair damage to the car to some extent, but it has to be like for like and under the supervision of the FIA. They're all also got free changing of tyres, so everybody's going to change their tyres. I suspect to the medium tyre at this point of the race, unless it starts drizzling again. That's still a possibility depending on how long this red flag is. I think that's about all they're really going to need to do in these conditions.
Well, what a race this is turning into, isn't it? What drama for all of these guys, and for Checo, for Sergio Perez, who is the race leader and will be up front when this race gets restarted. Could this be his opportunity for his first ever win at Monaco? What a huge story that would be for him. He's done well here in the past over the years. He's had one podium finish, he's had many points scoring positions, but of course until these last 2 years when he's been with Red Bull, he's not been really in a potential race-winning car. But he's done a fine job so far, and the Red Bull strategy has certainly worked well for them.
Charles Leclerc looked like he was going off to shout at somebody. There he is. I don't think he's very happy with his team.
No, I think that's very clear. He's been pretty angry throughout. The man who was leading this race quite comfortably in the early stages did a really solid job in those wet conditions, but ended up making 2 pit stops, one after the other, and then not only being beaten by his teammate Carlos Sainz because he hadn't made a pit stop, he went straight onto the slicks, but also being passed by both Red Bulls. So he's gone from 1st to 4th, and you can see the anger in him, Alan. You can really see the fact that he is not happy at all.
Well, he's delivered on the circuit. He's done everything he needed to do in the laps that he was on. So, and from that respect, it is a strategic problem that's put him down into 4th. And so from that point of view, now he's shouting at someone doesn't change anything. He's got to just go and get himself ready and get ready for the restart and see what he can take out of the rest of this race. Because, you know, it's not over. There's still going to be some racing to be done, and it's a long way to the end of the season as well in the World Championship fight with this man, Max Verstappen.
I think he's got every right to be angry as well. I mean, it was quite clear from we have the same data system that the teams use on the pit wall. It was very clear that he should have come in and made a stop.
So just looking at the stop there for Max Verstappen when he went onto the slicks. Now, while he may not be delighted that he's not leading this race, the key aspect, yeah, that was as Charles Leclerc came out, and that was Max appearing in front of him. And this is where Max did appear to go over that yellow line with the front wheel, certainly. And that hasn't come up as something being looked at the moment.
No, but Perez was under investigation for it. I just wonder, did somebody watching the race, one of the officials, just mistake the Red Bulls? I mean, I do it all the time. Did they mistake the Red Bulls, want Perez for Verstappen, and they are investigating it and then going, oh no, wait, we've got the wrong one? But one of them definitely did seem to cross the line there.
No, that is a big question, and I'm sure that will be being looked at the moment. But as I say, Alan, for Verstappen, although this isn't perfect for him, he's in third place. The key point over the course of this season, he's ahead of his World Championship contender.
Yeah, especially after yesterday, where his World Championship contender gave him 0.4 of a second advantage, was in pole position and was leading the race up till now. And now it's swung in a positive direction for him. The fact that Perez is leading as well also helps from a team perspective, because ultimately, as a team, Red Bull will take more points than Ferrari if it finishes in the position that it is right now.
One of the key things about this being a red flag situation, with an hour left on the clock, it's almost certain we're going to go back to racing, but we are almost certain to get something that we didn't get at the beginning of the Grand Prix, an actual race start, and I suspect this will be a standing restart.
Yeah, there's a good possibility of that, because it is a standard part of the rules nowadays, is that if there's a red flag, we get a standing restart, and that could be very interesting, particularly with different levels of grip on either side of the grid, the racing line as opposed to the off-race line.
Yeah, that's possibly one reason that they maybe don't want to do that, though, because if you're on the racing line, then you'll be able to get away because it'll be dry. If you're completely off, then just remember Carlos Sainz just a few laps ago with the tank slapper that he had.
Section 11.1 of the race director's notes. In accordance with various bits of the rules, drivers must keep to the right of the solid yellow line at the pit exit when leaving the pit and stay to the right of this line until it finishes after turn 1.
Yeah, no, that's interesting to read that out to us, because Verstappen clearly went over that yellow line, certainly with the left front. And that they will have different perspectives of it as well. There'll be different cameras that the stewards will be able to check out. So let's just review where we are at. Not quite half distance, although we rather doubt we will get full distance out of this race here today. Under red flag for the second time effectively, Sergio Perez is the race leader over Carlos Sainz. You're just seeing Carlos walk down the pits at the moment. There is the man in third place. It is Max Verstappen. Things haven't worked out perfectly for him, but he is ahead of his big rival, Charles Leclerc. Then in fifth place, we haven't talked about him a lot, but George Russell is in fifth place ahead of Lando Norris. So they ended up swapping around through all of the pit stops, and they will of course end up going out on probably the same type of tyre. So Russell has gained again, and isn't that ironic that he's finished in the top 5 at every race so far this year, and he's back into fifth place once again. It seems to be George's thing. Then Norris in 6th place, Alonso 7th, Hamilton 8th, so no change in that particular battle. Ocon in 9th, because Ocon did make a pit stop. He was holding up Hamilton for quite a long time, if you remember, but then he did actually come into the pits, and then the top 10 completed by Valtteri Bottas. It's good to see that Mick Schumacher is okay. No doubt talking to the team about what happened to the car, I guess, and perhaps why that incident occurred. But they're a very difficult moment indeed for Mick Schumacher, and a really disappointing way for it to end for him today, and to see both of the Haas cars go out at roughly the same time. That is really rather disappointing. Ayo Komatsu, the head of engineering, director of engineering, to having the chat there with Mick, and maybe they're trying to understand exactly what had gone wrong. There's Felipe Massa having a little look around as well. Many famous names from Formula One and from other celebrities here this weekend. And in fact, Felipe Massa is going to be on our post-race show, so I do hope you'll be staying with us on F1 Live and you'll be able to hear all of the input from Felipe.
Well, I can tell you with some certainty the post-race show is going to start in a little bit over an hour, because we only have 56 minutes of racing time left in this red-flagged Grand Prix. But look, the barrier does look to be largely back into position at the moment, so I don't think it's going to be too long until we go back to racing, and then a full restart procedure, I think, with a formation lap, a formation lap, and then probably a standing start, though we have to wait for race control to confirm that.
A little shake of the head from Charles Leclerc. He can't quite believe what's been going on. He's done everything right from a driver's point of view this weekend, setting the pace, fastest in qualifying, leading the early race, but in terms of tactics and strategy, that is where it has gone wrong. And now he's just got to regroup with the team and rethink how they can possibly do anything in this next stage of the race. But starting from 4th place, Alan, it's not going to be easy for him, is it?
No, I think practically after the first lap it's going to be very, very difficult, because I would suggest, with the time left, they'll go with mediums, and then they'll run all the way to the end of this race. So there'll be no pit stop to be able to do an undercut or an overcut.
It does look as though the pit stop actually worked fine for Ferrari. It didn't look as though they had a delay as such. It was purely the timing of it, and of course he did stack up behind as well.
Well, rather disappointingly, it's a rolling start. It will start at 17:15, so in 10 minutes' time we will get a rolling start to this Grand Prix. I was hoping for a standing start because everybody's on slicks now, but we'll see probably everybody adopt the medium tyre for the restarted race, and then they'll just keep driving it until the checkered flag comes out in about 55 minutes.
I expect Sergio is just being told it's a rolling start. He'll be very happy about that, Alan, because when they run single file like that, it certainly gives the leader a big advantage.
Yeah, but on the other side of it, he would have been on the drier part of the line as it curves around going to the first corner, and it would be Sainz that would have been on the wetter part on the left-hand side. And I think that's probably the reason that they've decided it is a rolling start.
And box now, box now, box for hard. Stay out, stay out, stay out. Tyre, position 5.
Oh. We didn't know that, Alan, did we? We didn't know that he'd been told to box and then told to stay out, but he'd already come in.
That was just
a mess. But it was complete confusion. It was a mess. It was communication errors that has caused them to be in this position. For Sainz, it was a case of a deliberate strategy to stay out, with the driver taking the control over it as opposed to the team. But this particular situation, it was just the left and the right hand not actually communicating correctly.
So let's have another look at this replay. It must have been at that point, I think, where they said, stay out, and he can see Sainz sitting there. You see, that's the time loss. So although the pit stop itself was okay when they changed the wheels, they did well. I mean, they were ready. At least it wasn't as bad as Daniel Ricciardo a few years ago, where they had the wrong wheels. They had the right wheels for him, but that slight delay probably was enough to lose position to Verstappen.
The position was really lost anyway. The data was clear that if he'd stopped a lap earlier, he would have come out, but not just in front of Sainz, but both Red Bulls. Staying out an extra lap, they'd gone onto a quicker tyre, they got in front of him. Then the data also showed that if he tried to double shuffle the cars, stop both at the same time, the time loss would be such because he'd have to stop and wait and lose even more time. So he had no chance of keeping at that position.
But if he had actually then went out and stayed out, as they ultimately said on the second call, then he would have lost even more time. But ultimately, he wouldn't have been further back than 4th. He would have been 4th, whichever way.
Exactly, but it was too late to make a stop by that point anyway. They should have come in a lap early. We were talking about it, and I think there's various people up and down the pit lane, particularly in the Red Bull garage, will be going, well, that was lucky.
Talking of gains and losses, just looking at the board there, Gasly is the biggest gain so far, 5 places. He was that early switch to intermediates, which did work for him, and he actually, to be fair, made some overtakes, which was very difficult to do. He's got into 12th place. He's still a couple of places outside the points, but I would think he's pretty pumped up and feeling good about that, bearing in mind he had a very disappointing day in qualifying when it was pure bad luck with the timing of his teammate crashing and causing a red flag, ironically, that basically denied him the opportunity to get into the top 10. So we will be watching Pierre Gasly closely. There he is, putting the crash helmet back on. Started in 17th, now up into 12th position, and maybe an opportunity for him. But of course, what we will be seeing is all the cars on fresh tyres, fresh slick tyres, and overtaking is going to be even more difficult.
It is going to be difficult, but we saw yesterday Charles Leclerc is extremely fast in this car at this circuit. And going back to some of his failed to finish, we saw it at the beginning of this pre-race show. Adam was talking us through some of the overtaking manoeuvres Charles Leclerc has made previously, where he battered that Ferrari to pieces trying to work his way through the field. This man, he wants to win a world championship. I wonder, does winning the Monaco Grand Prix mean more to him even than that, because he's never even finished a race here? Are we going to see a very angry Monegasque driver in a red car doing everything he can to get to the front of the field?
Well, I wonder, Alan. I mean, he is going to have that world championship in his head as well, isn't he?
Well, the thing he's got to have in his head at the moment is patience, and to take some very big deep breaths. What he's got to do now, like basically Verstappen, is take the maximum points out of today, whatever they can get. If it's a third, it's a third. If it's a fourth, it's a fourth. And then go to the next Grand Prix in Azerbaijan and fight again. Because right now, Charles Leclerc's big points payday was going to be today, up to that pit stop perspective. And so therefore he can't really change that now. All he's got to do is get whatever he can out of the rest of the race.
Now, you may see something that may confuse you just watching at home once the safety car leads the cars out of the pits. A number of cars, Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, and cars 24 and 23, and car 6, which is Nicholas Latifi, will be able to go past the safety car and rejoin the back of the field. They're getting that wave by. But once the safety car does leave the pits, that is the resumption of the race. The car will come back into the pit lane at the end of that lap and will be full to green flag running at that point. But at that point, those cars will be able to rejoin, so they'll be off down the track somewhere ahead of the race leader.
So we're going to have a race, in theory, if it doesn't get stopped again, of about 45 minutes, aren't we, by the time they get going. So a 45-minute race to the end, with Perez leading from Sainz and Verstappen. Those lapped cars, as you say, will be pushed on around, so at least there won't be lapped cars in between the front runners. They will all be running in their correct order. So Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, then Leclerc, the early race leader, who missed out due to strategy and is now running fourth. Then George Russell and Lando Norris, the two Brits who have raced hard on many occasions and have been pretty close together throughout the course of this race. Then we've got Alonso and Hamilton. They've had some fights here at Monaco over the years, way back when they were first teammates in 2007, when Hamilton joined Formula One and he was teammate at McLaren with Fernando Alonso. They had a real tussle here with slightly different strategies, and there was a bit of discontent from Hamilton about what the team decided to do, and it kind of started off the whole sequence that led to what happened in Hungary, where things went even worse between them. But that was a while ago. Hamilton is down in 8th place behind Alonso in 7th. Ocon is currently in 9th place, and the final points playing position at the moment is for Valtteri Bottas, who has been a consistent point scorer this year. Vettel, though, is always good here at Monaco, currently in 11th place. Gasly, who's been on that charge up the order, he's in 12th. Daniel Ricciardo, well, he's still pretty much where he started, I'm afraid. He started 14th, he's now 13th. Lance Stroll is 14th. Then Yuki Tsunoda, he's missed out a bit because he was just outside the top 10 when this race began. He's down in 15th place now. Zhou Guanyu down in 16th place, then the two Williams cars, and that's it, because we have lost, sadly, both of the Haas cars. Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen both out of this race, and so we have 18 cars ready to take the restart in a few moments' time. And, well, Charles Leclerc just trying to regather himself, see if there's any chance of winning this race.
We are just in the verge of being able to get a full points race in. The cars have got to complete lap 58, I believe, for a full points paying race to count. Anything less than that, there is a reduction in the number of points that get paid out at this Grand Prix because of the new point system that's been introduced in the wake of last year's Belgian Grand Prix. If you get from 50 to 75% of the race done, which we will do, the winner will only get 19 points, down to 1 point for 10th position. So we've got to get that race in. Now, my calculation is that's going to take us about 37.5 minutes to get to that point, assuming there's no safety cars and no red flags. If we get a safety car, of any length, or a red flag, or even perhaps a virtual safety car, we may not get to that lap 58 magic number where they pay out the full amount of points.
Interesting. That's a good point. Thank you, Sam. And we shall see how that works out. But for now, in theory, there is enough time to get the full points on the board and for Sergio Perez to potentially win at Monaco. But there's still plenty of time to go, and he's got to keep his head and control and not make any mistakes. He is already a winner in Formula One. He's had 2 victories in his career so far, but is he going to be able to take a victory at this most famous of circuits? It would mean a huge amount to him to become the first Mexican to win the Monaco Grand Prix. Let's wait and see. There's plenty more action to come. The Ferraris, we know, are quick. Carlos Sainz will not be giving up from that second place and putting the pressure on him. And Verstappen, of course, and Leclerc, both are capable of some pretty brave overtaking manoeuvres here. We've seen both of them make moves in the past.
So, George, we have some rain west of here. It doesn't look like it will hit us, but it's not completely possible that there will be some more towards the end.
Wow. Just to add to the fun and games, Alan, we might even get a bit more rain as well.
Yeah, it's not as if there's been enough roll of the dice so far as the engines are fired up and the covers are coming off the tyres right now. And just looking out, the wind direction, and funnily enough, has changed 90 degrees and it's got a lot darker above, but it's not quite as dark as you would need it normally to rain, but still 45 minutes to go.
It looks to me like that rain will go to the north of Monaco, but we just don't know. It's bubbling up. It's directly north of Antibes at the moment, and those of you who know the Riviera know that town very well. It's not very far away from Monaco, and it could come in if we do get a sprinkling of rain towards the end of this Grand Prix. I suspect, it's interesting that some of the drivers are going for used hard tyres. I was just beginning to wonder whether the soft would be in play, but brand new medium tyres would be the way I'd have gone. Used hard tyres is a surprising choice for, well, anybody.
Yeah, so Ferrari have gone for the used hard tyre, whereas Red Bull have gone for the new medium compound tyre, which is a bit of a surprise when you bear in mind that we've got 45 minutes of this race to be run, so it's effectively under half distance, isn't it? I mean, it's around that level.
And with the vague possibility of rain, that's, again, a very strange strategic decision from Ferrari. We'll see what the other cars have gone on as they come across the tyre ID line momentarily. But let's see if both Ferraris have gone for that option. Well, hard's there for one. I didn't see the other car.
Yeah, well, we'll get those, as you say, those factors will come up in a moment, Alan.
Yeah, the one thing from Ferrari's point of view, because it's a rolling start, they don't have the acceleration issue and difference between the hard and the medium. And so from that perspective, they can maybe take the gamble if they think the mediums will not be able to last the 45 minutes to the end of this race. And so that would be the only thing I could imagine. But the Ferrari's going... apologies. It's the cars that are unlapping themselves at this moment in time going past.
Well, I said it would confuse some people watching at home, like Alan McNish at home in Monaco.
Me.
Just looking at the tyre selection now. So, both Red Bulls have gone for brand new, shiny, medium tyres, which for me is the right choice. Both Ferraris have opted not to change their tyres. They had free choice of tyres. They could have done that, but they didn't. George Russell, he's on new mediums. Lando Norris, he hasn't changed tyres. He stayed on the hards. Alonso, Hamilton and Ocon, all on new mediums. Bottas hasn't changed. He's staying on the used hards, as is Vettel, Gasly, Ricciardo and Lance Stroll. Everybody else has opted for new medium tyres, or if you're Alex Albon, used medium tyres because you haven't got any other choice.
Well, there we go then. That's how they're going to be starting this Grand Prix, and we're just getting those lapped cars out of the way. You can just see the Williams going through now as well, so they will certainly wait to restart this race until the lapped cars have caught the back of the field up. But here at Monaco, that doesn't take too long because it's a short lap. It's the shortest lap of the season, and it won't take them very long to come to the back of the field once again. So we are watching Sergio Perez for Red Bull leading the way from Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. We've got the other Williams still coming through to unlap itself actually as well. So Latifi's gone through already. I think that's Albon who is now going to peel his way through and join the back of the field. But yes, behind Perez and Sainz, then you've got the two World Championship contenders. There is Albon. You just see him going ahead of the race leader for a moment. He'll go past the safety car. There you go. And then the safety car will gather the rest of the field together. The two championship contenders, Verstappen and Leclerc, third and fourth. Then George Russell from Mercedes in 5th position. Let's watch them as they come up. Steady pace, of course, behind the safety car. Tyres are actually cooling rather than getting warmer because they would have been preheated before they went onto the cars, but at this sort of pace they will actually be dropping in temperatures. Mind you, Alan, of course they've got a lot of tread on these new tyres, so they don't suffer quite so much as when you've got a worn tyre.
No, true, you can generate temperature with acceleration and braking to try to get some temperature back in it. However, you still have to be careful on that first braking into Saint-Devote, and also just in the first braking where the rear could be unstable as much as locking a front brake. The problem is that the safety car effectively is going as fast as it can, but even round Monaco, that is slow in comparison to what a Formula 1 car can do for the loading that the tyres require.
We've just had a question in on hashtag F1 Live from Dawson. Are the cars now all overfueled? The short answer to that question is yes, massively overfueled. They're designed to run 78 laps of this Grand Prix. They're never going to reach that distance, so there's far too much fuel in the car, so they're all going to turn it up to the maximum and just go racing.
Yeah, fair enough. But this is not exactly a power track, is it?
No, but it's also one of the points where you can actually use that fuel to try to generate tyre temperature as well. You don't have to think about it in any way, and so therefore you just turn it up even on this lap round to the restart.
Hamilton in the middle of that group there. He's actually in between the two Alpines of Alonso ahead of him and Ocon behind him. So that's going to be interesting on the restart. And so it looks like we're getting ready. The lights are out on the safety car. We are getting ready for the Monaco Grand Prix to get underway once again. It is being led by Sergio Perez, who takes it nice and slowly. It's up to him to decide when he puts his foot down and tries to make the break. He's followed by Carlos Sainz, the Spaniard, for Ferrari. Then Max Verstappen, the championship leader by 6 points from Charles Leclerc, who is right behind him. Here we go then. Perez starts to pick up the pace now. As he comes around, he will complete lap number 32, and we are back to racing in Monaco. Carlos Sainz chases after him behind. Keep an eye on Verstappen and Leclerc. Leclerc actually not making a very good restart. He's actually dropped a little bit of time in the background. You can see Leclerc quite a long way back, with George Russell getting through Saint-Devote safely, and Perez making the most of being in front, having control so far of this race. Can he maintain that control, Alan? Oh, I say it, and he locks up. Oh dear, just about got away with it.
Yeah, he got away with it, but that left front tyre now will not be quite as round as it was before. But you saw just the acceleration out of the final corner, Anthony Noakes, and the two Ferraris on the harder tyre were just wheel spinning and not able to accelerate. So the medium definitely is quicker at this point, but Perez is he's got a good position. He doesn't need to attack every corner because there's no way Sainz is going to be attacking him on lap one.
I'm wondering if Alonso is going to have a go at Lando Norris here, because Alonso's really tight in behind Lando Norris. In fact, they're both pretty close behind Russell. Hamilton is right at the back of that group. You've got a Mercedes leading the group, that's Russell, then Norris. There's the Alpine of Alonso, and at the back of that group it is Lewis Hamilton. So a very tight encounter, all for points here, and vital points for each and every one of them. Behind that group you've then got Ocon in 9th place, Bottas currently in 10th. And no other changes on this restart. Nobody, I think, so far has had an incident. So they've all managed to get through this restart cleanly. Gasly is still down in 12th place, and he will be trying to find a way past Sebastian Vettel. But this is now at the situation, as we know, where overtaking can be very, very difficult to do around this Monaco circuit. You're watching Alonso versus Hamilton here as we come up the hill. But, Alan, it's going to be pretty easy for Alonso to block him away for now.
Oh, certainly, he could just sit the car in the right position. As long as he hits the braking points and as long as he gets clean exits, then Lewis can't do very much about him, even if he was half a second, 1 second a lap faster. And I think Lewis has been in enough wars today. The new front wing on that car that was replaced under the red flag after his tangles with Esteban Ocon in the Alpine earlier on. And so he'll be thinking right now, yeah, okay, I might make 7th, but also there's also a risk that he loses everything in the points battle right now.
Interestingly, fastest lap for Albon, who wasn't given time to catch the back of the field. I thought he would be. But remember, Albon was able to unlap himself, but he actually hadn't caught the back of the rest of the field when he got going. But he has, with clear air, he's just set the fastest lap. I mean, that may well change over the next lap or so. Let's just see what Perez does in response. Albon did a 120.9. This will give us a more clear indication. 120.6 for Perez. So actually Albon's lap time still pretty impressive, but it is Perez who's got clear space ahead of him, who has now set the pace on board with Carlos Sainz.
Okay, 29 laps expected, Max, from here. 29 laps.
So Sam, that should be enough, as you said, for full points to be awarded?
Yeah, it certainly will be if they get all 29 in and we don't have any other incidents. With all the field bunched up like this, there's an old American racing saying, yellows breed yellows, caution breeds cautions. When all the cars bunched up together and people trying to battle on different tyre compounds, we could still see quite a bit of action and more safety cars.
Yeah, well, let's find out. We've still got 18 cars out of the 20 that started this race competing. And actually, Albon's just done another fastest lap, to be fair, which is good stuff. And of course, he's got a bit of clear space. 5-second penalty for Ocon for causing a collision. Now, that's very interesting. Whether that was when they had the incident with Hamilton, I presume it is from earlier on. A 5-second penalty to Ocon, which if they don't stop again, and we're not expecting them to make a pit stop again, that'll be added at the end of the race.
Yeah, and as things sit at the moment, that'll drop him straight out of the points as well, so that's a pretty big penalty.
Yeah, it depends how close everybody is by the end of the Grand Prix, of course. He will have no doubt got a bit more of a gap between him and the cars behind him, but well, let's wait, because Bottas is the car behind him, and Bottas has been showing a decent pace. Perez and now Leclerc going fastest. So just as Perez's lap has been recorded, Leclerc's just done a 119.1. So that was a good lap by Charles Leclerc, but of course he's chasing after Verstappen.
Don't know why, but Alonso's driving slow.
Copy. He's just been told to manage his pace as much as possible, just to keep you behind.
There you go, Lewis. Now you know why Fernando's going slow, just to manage his pace and keep you behind. It's going to be very, very difficult for Hamilton to find a way past Fernando Alonso. These two have had many, many battles over the years. There is huge respect between them, there's no doubt about it, but getting one over the other is always important to either of them, and it's going to be tough for Hamilton.
Just looking at the lap times at the moment, I think Sergio Perez is definitely also managing the pace because he's quick in the first sector where he needs to be, and then after that he can just sort of gauge the gap back to Carlos Sainz. Sainz, even although he's on the harder tyre and Perez started on the new medium, the laps at times are basically all the same, and I think he's just the one controlling what he's doing and trying to make sure he's got enough tyre life at the end of the race.
So Ocon ahead has got a 5-second penalty. He's currently 2.4 ahead of you, so that's the point.
Yeah, so you have to stay in range of Ocon to be able to move up one place, but that still wouldn't be enough to get in the points, would it?
Before this battle at the front really starts kicking off, which it's clearly about to, with Carlos Sainz picking up the pace in response to the two Red Bulls and the second Ferrari behind him, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the cars further back, because we are going to see some almighty battles as the field starts to compress, and Daniel Ricciardo is fighting Pierre Gasly really hard, Valtteri Bottas is fighting Esteban Ocon really hard, and Lewis Hamilton, well, he's got to do something about Fernando Alonso. Alex Albon, though, is really leading the way on pace because he's got all of that clean air around him.
Well, are we going to see any overtakes though? It's going to be tricky, but you can see the track itself, Alan, we've got obviously the dry line, but it's looking pretty dry most areas now, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't have those sort of very heavy wet damp patches that we saw when we saw Sainz getting the big oversteer when he had a look at Perez once before. I think those situations have gone, but it's still going to be super difficult to try to get a clean overtake. Any overtake's going to be due to, I would say, a mistake by Perez, or alternatively a lot of shoulder barging, or even a mistake and then you still have to do some shoulder barging to try to get it done.
Absolutely right. And of course reliability, which we have seen as a factor this year. You won't expect reliability to be such an issue here at Monaco because the strain on the cars is less, but doesn't mean it's impossible. And last weekend we saw Charles Leclerc leading the Spanish Grand Prix, only to retire with a power unit problem on the Ferrari. And we have seen some power unit problems from Ferrari engines here this weekend, not on the Ferraris but on their support teams to a certain extent. So there's always other questions until we get to that checkered flag to discover who's going to win this race. But for now, it's Sergio Perez who's doing a fine job. Sainz is not giving up, though. I tell you, he's just done another very good first sector there, staying right in the range with Checo. And ironically, Alan, these two are the ones who end up in the wall virtually together yesterday in qualifying, because when Perez spun, Sainz ended up gathering into him, didn't he?
Yeah, now they're 1-2. I've got to be honest, I didn't expect it when we saw that yesterday that it would be in this position, but that's the way that things roll sometimes. Perez definitely has driven very well here. He's had the performance over Max Verstappen, I think, all weekend, and he's put himself into the position when there was a strategic error, as we said, by Ferrari, that he was there to pick up the pieces. Now he's still got quite a few laps to go before the end of the race, but now just on another fastest lap, 17.03 tenths quicker than Carlos Sainz. So now the gap is over 1 second between the two.
Hamilton really harrying Alonso, but I'm not sure that he's going to be able to find a bit of a gap. Alonso's so smart. He's done this for so many years. You know, actually, after he'd done 14 laps of this race, he's now taken over the all-time record for number of laps at Monaco. It was held by Graham Hill coming into this event, but 14 laps of the race, and he's now done 38, and he has now done more laps of Monaco than anybody else in the history of Formula One. Still in there, still doing a good job, Alonso. He's 7th, and he's still fending off Lewis Hamilton for the moment. DRS enabled, but Sam, it makes very little difference around this track, the drag reduction system.
It does make a difference, and I think they are going to close up at the front four, certainly with that.
Okay, Lando, we believe there'll be 25 laps. Our race will be to have better tyres than them towards the end.
Yeah, I think they're all saying that.
Now the choice on the medium tyre was actually quite interesting. For the new mediums at the start of the race was expected to go to about lap 28, 29 before they dropped off and needed to change. They were about 28 or 29 laps at the start of the race when they put the mediums on, so they're going to start losing performance against the hards.
Any sign of training on Checo?
Not yet.
Yeah, but that was prior to the big rain, and the rain washed all the rubber that was on the circuit that would sort of help it. So that's exactly why Sainz is now asking, is there graining on that medium tyre? Because it's effectively what you call a green circuit. It doesn't have that level of rubber that's helping the tyre get to the end, that softer one. But Norris was also on the hard tyre, as well as Leclerc and Sainz. They're obviously playing a little bit of the long game.
Back on board with Lewis Hamilton, chasing down Fernando Alonso as he comes down towards the hotel hairpin. As Alonso just controls the positioning. You can see that Hamilton keeps his hands on the wheel as normal through there. It's interesting on board Leclerc, he actually takes his hand off the steering wheel when he goes around that hairpin. But Hamilton, it's a slightly different style.
You may notice on your screens you've got the leaderboard at the moment, the timing tower. At the top it no longer says laps out of 77, it says 29 minutes 30 seconds and counting down. That's when the race will end, when that clock reaches 0.
Yeah, so that's right. It's not going to be the full race distance today, but it still should be full points because they will have done more than 3/4. Look how close Hamilton is there. Very, very tight to the back of the Alpine, but there's no real way through. And it's a classic situation of racing hard here. For Mercedes at the moment, they've still got the other car up in 5th place, and Hamilton in 8th, so they're on for a double point score. But this is a frustrating time for Lewis Hamilton because you just know he's got more pace in this car than the Alpine up ahead of him. But there's no way through as yet. The other one of Ocon is still chasing. Remember, with that 5-second additional penalty that he's been given, Bottas is a second behind, and then Vettel is another 2 seconds behind. So Ocon definitely still on target to lose at least 2 places. Gasly within a second of Vettel as well, and another one to keep an eye on because he's been pushing hard.
This battle that you're seeing here between the Alpine and the Mercedes, with Fernando Alonso slowing Lewis Hamilton down, is opening up it's not in play yet, but opening up a slight opportunity for Lando Norris to go after the fastest lap point later in the Grand Prix if it stays dry. He can dive in and grab a set of soft tyres and come back out and go for that fastest lap if McLaren choose to take that gamble. He has an opportunity to do that if Alonso keeps doing what he's doing.
I was thinking about that, Alan, actually. The fastest lap, it's just gone to Verstappen. We may see the likes of Verstappen and Leclerc backing off every now and then trying to get that extra point at the end.
Yeah, exactly. But also another point for Lando Norris is if he puts on a set of softs and there is another safety car late in the race, then it gives him a tyre advantage as well, where he could maybe nick another position off Russell. However, it's ifs and buts, but all you've got to do is exactly as Max Verstappen did in Abu Dhabi last year. Keep using the situation to give you the best chance if something comes up.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's exactly what they did so well. There is Max Verstappen, so he's running in third place, although brought that gap down a little bit to where it was originally. He's really quite close behind Carlos now. Charles Leclerc is a little further back, so there is a bit of a gap that's opened up there, but Perez is still very much our race leader. There's Verstappen then, putting some pressure on Carlos Sainz. The medium tyres on the Red Bull may be working better than the hard tyre on the Ferrari, but it's what they chose, it's what they selected, and the gap between them is still pretty tiny, just 1.1 seconds as they went over the line that time. Back in the background there, Charles Leclerc, and it's Perez who sets fastest lap this lap around from the lead. That's about half a second quicker, in fact, than Carlos Sainz, so he's opened up a bit more of a gap. Let's just ride on board with Carlos.
But we're also under no threat from behind, right? So surely I can just push now and try and make a mistake ahead. If you don't want me to push, what the hell am I going to do apart from just sit here?
Okay, Lando, so we are happy to push, as you said. We think there might be 23 laps remaining. The key thing would be, if rain came towards the end, that we had some rubber left on the tyres to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Alan, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah, they still want those tyres to be in reasonable shape.
Yeah, that's definitely a point, but you've got to be in it to win it, and you've got to be pressuring the people ahead of you as well. I'd sort of think that being in no man's land, but rubber for a scenario that is, I would say, reducing more than increasing, is maybe not the best gamble. But right now, Norris, as we said, though, has got the opportunity, and very close to the opportunity, to do that free pit stop and go for the fastest lap, or alternatively, hope, I would say, for a safety car.
It's a little bit early to obviously make that free pit. It's way early to make that free pit stop at the moment. But at the moment, if the gaps stay as they are back from Norris to Alonso, Norris is absolutely in the window to be able to make a pit stop without any penalty or losing any position. So he is able to do it, but he has to keep that going for another 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, but he's 3 seconds a lap faster than Alonso right now. 16.7 to 20 flat. And so Alonso definitely is backing up. He's got the handbrake well and truly on, keeping Lewis Hamilton behind him.
That big split in the field caused by Alonso as well is beginning to drive the back markers back toward, because he's holding up everybody back up to Zhou in the Alfa Romeo, and the two Williamses are about to join the back of that queue. Perez will not, it won't be long until Perez gets to the back of that very busy traffic.
And ironically, of course, this is not helping Ocon, because Ocon would like to break away a bit more from the likes of Bottas and Vettel, but he's in that queue, he can't do that. If he was able to break away, then at least the 5-second penalty he's given may not be such a factor. But Alonso, because he's not going that quickly, it means that a couple of cars, at least 2, maybe 3 cars behind Ocon, will actually finish ahead of him once that 5-second penalty is added in.
That's where I'm not 100% sure why the Alpine strategy is to have Alonso push back, because it's effectively penalising their other car on a circuit where it's very difficult to overtake anyway.
Maybe they'll release him in a little while. Maybe they'll say, right, off you go, tyres are okay.
But to get Ocon back into position, which is what they need to do, they need to get Ocon in front of Alonso. There is a big Lewis Hamilton-shaped problem.
Yes, indeed. Yes, you're right. Ocon getting past Hamilton's going to be a tough one. Meanwhile, you've got Ricciardo in the group there with Lance Stroll behind in the Aston Martin. So Aston Martins at this stage are not in a position to score points, but nearly, because of Ocon's penalty. So it may well be that Vettel could get into the points.
Yeah, they will score points, because Vettel is within 5 seconds of Esteban Ocon at the moment, and it doesn't look like that situation is going to change.
No, at the moment he is okay, but you do wonder, as we get to more nearer the end, that 5 seconds could make a bit of a difference. Track limits for Tsunoda, just meaning that he got a time deleted, but nothing major. That was down at the chicane, so he straight lined the chicane, presumably. Tsunoda is down in 15th place at the moment, with Zhou just behind, and then Latifi and Albon. So it looks as though at the moment Latifi is going to beat Albon here today. The two Williams teammates. Albon has been the stronger of the pairing, no doubt throughout the course of the season, but it hasn't worked out for Albon particularly well here today. He's managed to score points from a long way back, particularly in Australia earlier this season. Great strategy when they run that very, very late pit stop on the last lap of the race, and Albon was able to score points as a result. But for Williams today, it's not looking very promising, I have to say, and it's nothing like we have seen from that team at Monaco over the years. Some 3 victories to Williams, but the last one was back in 2003 for Juan Pablo Montoya, and their last pole position was actually Ralf Schumacher that same year, back in 2003. So it's a while since Williams have really been able to celebrate a strong result here at Monaco. It's Red Bull at the moment who are looking at a double podium with Perez first and Verstappen third, but Sainz is not giving up. He's still in the mix, and on this lap Charles Leclerc has got a bit closer again to Max Verstappen, so he kind of dropped back for a little while and now he's caught up, and then we've got this real gaggle of cars which Alonso is leading, and then it goes all the way back down the field to Ricciardo, Stroll, Tsunoda and Zhou, and then you see the 2 Williams with nothing to choose between any of them really.
How far are they ahead?
More a case of how close they are behind Lewis. Alonso's pace is very slow in comparison.
Yeah, so it's a frustration. The lap times he's doing, he's in the 119s on that last lap. 119, that's 3 seconds slower a lap than our race leader. That's a big amount.
And he's 30 seconds behind, so between Alonso and Norris is 30 seconds. In fact, 33 seconds now.
The gap I'm looking at is the gap looking back to the leaders.
Sorry, they're behind me?
They are 30 seconds away at the moment, 30 seconds.
So, yeah, Hamilton just getting the word about what's going on at the moment. But we're on board with Daniel Ricciardo at the moment, and he is still trying to find a way of getting on to Pierre Gasly. Gasly frustrated by Sebastian Vettel. There's Vettel then, former winner here. Gasly, who's had some good results here in the past, finished 6th last year for AlphaTauri, best finished 5th for Red Bull when he was with the team in 2019.
If we're doing any stopping, make sure we jump this guy in front.
If we do any stopping, but we're not expecting any stopping, are we?
If you stop now, Lewis, you'll be, well, actually, if Lewis stopped now, he'd go and straight to the back of the field and be racing with Alex Albon for position, which he probably doesn't want to do.
Yes, a pit stop is not what you want at this stage, is it, Alan?
No, certainly not, but one person that's got a bit of a hurry on is Max Verstappen, who did a lap time 6/10 quicker than Perez on the last lap, has done the quickest first sector of anybody, which is admittedly fuel related on the pull up the hill, and here he is.
Sainz went straight on.
Copy.
He says Sainz went straight on. Must have been the chicane, yeah.
Yep.
So that is not ideal, and it's come up actually on the screens as he's had the lap time deleted. Let's just have a look. Watching Sainz. Yep.
Yeah, but he didn't gain a lasting advantage there, did he? Max was so far away, he wasn't under threat, and he didn't gain a particular lap time advantage from it either.
No, so there will unlikely be any kind of penalty given to Carlos Sainz there. Got to try and avoid it if Max Verstappen is right behind him, of course.
I do wonder if that Ferrari's, because it's going dry, it's getting up to speed, I wonder if they're getting to that mode of the porpoising just on the exit of the tunnel, and that's what we saw in practice quite a lot. And qualifying, both Ferraris going straight on at the chicane because the braking points were disrupted by that porpoising.
Carlos Sainz running in second place. It's where he finished in this race last year to Max Verstappen. It does look a bit like he's going to end up with another second place to a Red Bull, only this time it's going to be Sergio Perez instead, riding on board with Max. Let's just enjoy some of the driving that's going on here.
Just had an F1 Live comment come in from Ed Headley. If Lando stops for softs now, could he catch George Russell? I hadn't actually considered that. My initial feeling is probably no, but I don't think he's got anything to lose from stopping for softs later in the race if it looks like that rain is going to hold off. Right now, Lando Norris is in a very secure position in 6th.
Yeah, and of course he was on the podium here last year. He's not going to get that same level of result this time, and not unless we suddenly have dramas in the closing stages. Never impossible here at Monaco, but for now it looks as though it's Red Bull and Ferrari dominating things.
Well, we're not seeing on our screens at the moment, but Sergio Perez is just beginning to catch the back of the back marker chain, with Alex Albon just coming out of the tunnel in front of him, and then they're going to get into the big traffic with Nicholas Latifi, the next one, and then all of that big gaggle of cars of El Train of Fernando Alonso.
I don't know what's been going on with Joe and Tsunoda. They swapped places, and now Joe has dropped behind Latifi as well. So something's been going on further down the field there between that little group. They are way down the back, though. 15th place for Tsunoda, Latifi now 16th, and Joe, who had nipped ahead of Tsunoda briefly, now being shown as 17th. You're riding on board with Fernando Alonso here, and as you can see, there's his teammate, Esteban Ocon, who is still chasing after Hamilton. Hamilton seems to have backed off a little bit over this last lap, or has Alonso picked up his pace? He has picked up his pace a bit, hasn't he, on that last lap? We gather Albon is heading into the pits and retiring from the race. It's not been a good day for Alex Albon. Qualifying was disappointing. He had the pace to get out of Q1. It didn't quite happen with the timing of everything that went on. And sadly, it looks as though we've got a third retirement. Now, let's see what was going on with Joe and Tsunoda. This was down into the chicane. Oh, a big wobble from Joe on the inside there. Whoa! Look at that, Alan.
Wow. That's a car control, admittedly. It wasn't as expected. It looks like just on the bump. Here we're on board. He goes to the right. And he didn't expect Tsunoda to brake so early. I think Tsunoda braked earlier than what he was anticipating. And so he was either do the big wobble and get it sorted out and abort the chicane, or alternatively hit the back of Tsunoda.
Yeah, so thankfully they got away with it. That could have easily ended up in a complete pile-up.
Yeah, he was very, very lucky there. It was a close run thing. Very, very quick hands there from Joe. But just one person that has now done the fastest lap of the race so far, Fernando Alonso.
So all that waiting around and doing slow laps, now he suddenly picked up the pace. He's, as you say, he's at a 1:15.8, fastest lap of anybody so far. Fantastic. And in fact, it's almost as fast as the ideal perfect lap of all the best sectors.
Norris.
I tried. I need a new pen after that.
Pit stop for Norris. You said, Alan, you saw him coming in.
Yep. Yeah, Lando Norris popped into the pits, new set of mediums, on his way back out again, 2.8. Not fantastically quick, but it was a free stop, as we know, as he'll get easily out of the pit lane, whereas Fernando Alonso's just coming onto the start and finish straight now.
Yeah. Norris is actually in a nice position where he's come out of the pit, so he's lost that late race opportunity to go to a soft and go after the fastest lap point, because Fernando Alonso has decided to wake up and start driving properly. Lando Norris is able on those new mediums to have a lot of clear air now. There's nobody on the track anywhere near him. The next car, he's just coming down to the hairpin. The next car on track in front of him is George Russell, who's in the swimming pool complex. So he's got a huge amount of time to play with and a huge amount of clear racetrack, which is pretty unique at the track at the moment.
So he could get that extra point for fastest lap. The lap record is unlikely to be beaten, probably, because lap record was taken last year by the previous generation of cars, by Lewis Hamilton, at a 1:12.909. This generation of cars is a little slower, but they're getting quicker all the time. So we'll wait and see what lap time he does, but I think that's going a bit too much, a 1:12.909. We would expect to see him perhaps in the 1:14s, maybe in the 1:13s, but I doubt beyond that point.
Now you see Perez and the gaggle of the Ferrari and the two Red Bulls now catching the back of Joe, Latifi and Tsunoda. So within one more lap, then they'll be catching them. Here's Sainz.
Perez lap time 18.0. Try to put pressure on him. And lappers in front.
Yeah, surely that's your whole job here at Monaco when you're following someone who's put pressure on them.
But also he needs to get within the 1 second for DRS, is 1.5 seconds, and with traffic coming up, so that he can maybe have a look if traffic does affect Sergio Perez a little bit.
That traffic could give Perez DRS, of course, as well. But looking at the top 4, they are in reverse order of lap speed. Charles Leclerc is the fastest of the top 4, followed by Max Verstappen, then Carlos Sainz, then Sergio Perez, who's the slowest of the top 4. So they are all going to concertina quite soon.
Yeah, and he was just within DRS range then, I think. So Sainz, he's in that 1 second. He was just down to 0.9 briefly. Let's listen to Ocon's radio.
Esteban, we have a 5-second time penalty. We need to push up, please.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised they've only just told him, because we got told a long time ago. But to be fair, he has opened up a gap over Bottas, hasn't he, that he didn't have earlier on.
He just needs to get past Hamilton, and Hamilton's being held up by Alonso.
This is Norris.
Do I go for fastest lap?
So Lando, once you're comfortable, we can go for it, but just let it come. There's no need to go for it.
What is it? I need some information.
It's a 15.8.
Okay, so now he knows, and the team are being cautious. They don't want him crashing that car in trying to get fastest lap, because the points he's going to get for 6th are so important to McLaren. They're only going to score with one car by the looks of things, and Lando's done the majority of the point scoring for the team throughout the course of this season, and he's going to do it again. So 1 extra point doesn't make all that difference.
Fernando is blocking Lewis, so he needs to push if possible.
Copy. Lando's been informed.
Ah, there you go. Maybe that's why Lando has picked up the pace, because that's exactly what we were talking about, Sam, that because Alonso was slowing everybody down, it was denying Ocon the chance to make more than make that 5-second gap to his opponents.
Yeah, he's got to open up the gap quite a bit more. It's 3.1 seconds he's got over Valtteri Bottas in 10th position, so Ocon does need to push. Also, Sebastian Vettel is still in the window, just about of nicking a point as well from Ocon. So he does need to open up that gap, and he needs for that to happen for Lewis Hamilton to get out of his way. Lewis Hamilton's only a second in front of Ocon, whereas Alonso is beginning to open it up a bit, but he's still a second in front of Hamilton. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but at the front, it's getting very spicy.
Yeah, it's close, isn't it? Carlos Sainz is right on the back of Sergio Perez. Verstappen's not far behind as well. This is fantastic for the fans to be able to watch, Alan, here at Monaco. You know, you've got the 2 top teams. They are the dominant teams of this year. We know that the battle for the championship is going to be between Red Bull and Ferrari throughout this season, isn't it? And ironically, in a way, we've got the 2 teammates who are battling for the win here. The 2 guys who are not actually leading the championship, Perez and Sainz, with the main contenders Verstappen and Leclerc behind them.
Yeah, certainly from the local point of view then, I'm sure they would prefer that it was actually Leclerc, as it was at the beginning, that would be leading. But as it turns out, they are the dominant 2 teams, and they have been over the course of this weekend and also the season. So it's not a surprise that they're there. It is a surprise that they've gone in such different strategies in the way they're trying to do it. But certainly Sainz is coming back. He's consistently within that 1 second window right now. And Perez, I think, is controlling it up to the back of these cars ahead as well, because it means that then Sainz has also got to keep one eye on the mirror, because Max Verstappen will try and sneak it if it's possible. But look at Lando Norris, fastest lap of the race, 14.6.
Ah, good man. Sam, what were you picking up from the view of the tyres on Perez's car there?
Well, remember Perez did a big flat spot on that left front earlier in the Grand Prix, where you just got a really clear impact of really clear view of what that means for his tyres now. You can see a big hole missing from that wear pattern, but the front tyres are looking so worn.
Yeah, they're looking very, very grained from the centre point on both front tyres, not just one. That was the question that Carlos Sainz asked earlier on. Is there any graining? And there wasn't at that time, there is now.
Tell me the reason, please.
For the collision with Hamilton, you've been penalised.
Guys, I crashed into me, we got the penalty, yeah. That's very clear.
Sorry, mate.
Tsunoda has gone off down at turn 1. It's Tsunoda from a long way down the order. And I think he's going to be rejoining, yes. So Tsunoda missing out, but it didn't affect the leaders. But it is very, very close up front once again, isn't it? Between Perez, Sainz, then Verstappen and Leclerc.
And this is the tyre selection that went on after the red flag, going for those used hards rather than the new mediums, could finally be paying off for Ferrari. Those hards have got a bit more life in them than the mediums on the Red Bulls, and that could be why Perez is struggling so much to hold back the 2 red cars.
There's a battle going on just ahead of the leaders between Zhou Guanyu and Latifi. There they go, just through the shot. Latifi in the blue Williams, and then it's Joe. You can see how close they were. They were pretty tight a moment ago. There is Christian Horner wondering how this is all going to work its way out. He's got both cars, potential podium finishes here, but the Ferraris have not given up just yet.
I think Checo his tires.
Yeah, so Max has picked up that Sergio Perez, is struggling with his tyres.
Yeah, but he's got 8 minutes to go, and so he's only got basically 5.5, 6 laps to go, and then it'll all be over with a checkered flag. So he's got to manage it, and I think right now, Ben, all he's got to do is basically make sure his exits are quick and clean, as opposed to necessarily the speed through the corner. He can effectively stop the car in the middle of the corner, not use the front tyre, but make sure he's got good exits.
How is that pressure feeling for Checo? He is so experienced, he can deal with it, I am sure. But remember, it was yesterday in qualifying, when he'd been doing such a great job throughout all of the free practice, that he came down to the next corner here, Portier, yesterday. This was where he crashed in qualifying. He cannot afford to do that now, otherwise he'll throw away a potential race victory.
Well, just look at the draft he's got coming down into the chicane. Sainz has got a great run here.
Yeah, he has had a little look, but he ends up with a lock-up, and of course that could put him under trouble from Max Verstappen. So Verstappen will gain any advantage if Sainz makes a mistake. You're on board with Max Verstappen now in third place. It's rare, Alan, to see the 4 cars at the front of the Monaco Grand Prix this close with 6.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, they're all within 2.2 seconds from Perez back to Leclerc. But it's going to be a case of, I would say, Perez making a mistake at this moment in time, but Sainz is putting the pressure on. He's got to put the pressure on. He's got to try and just keep moving around and create any situation he can. And then he's got to give himself one shot. But if he does get that one shot, he's got to go for it 100%. He can't do a half attempt on it. It's got to be a full, I would say, throw it down the inside and make sure it gets done.
Yeah, I mean, remember that Daniel Ricciardo was able to win for Red Bull despite losing a huge amount of power from his engine back in 2018. He still fended them all off, and Perez is trying to do similar with a bit of a lack of grip. But the problem is you've got all 4 cars together, the anxiety there at Ferrari, the hopes indeed for Ferrari. Can they actually come back and take victory? Can Leclerc end up on the podium? At the moment, the local man is not going to be on the podium.
No, but it looks like at 58 laps it's also going to be full points as well for this race. And so I think we've gone past that threshold point. But also I do believe Sergio Perez is, okay, he's done his front tyres, but he's now holding back so that he doesn't catch Zhou and Latifi and that battle, so that doesn't come into the mix of it.
Ah, right, okay, so he's trying to judge it, trying to measure the battle that's going on just up ahead of them, although those guys should have to get out of his way pretty promptly if they get within a certain distance. But Carlos Sainz is still chasing hard. 5 minutes to go then in the Monaco Grand Prix, a race that is on target to be won by the man who started in 3rd place, which is unusual. It's been done before. Lewis Hamilton has actually done it a couple of times in his career, won from 3rd on the grid. But it's usually the front row that counts. But Perez, for now, is holding on.
He's holding on, but this is one of the few overtaking opportunities. I could see it coming down into the hairpin, and Carlos would have to certainly throw it down the inside to do it. But he generally has had quite a lot more speed out of Mirabeau hairpin down to there.
Tsunoda's gone off at turn 1. Yeah, Tsunoda, the same as before, I think. Mind you, I was just thinking, if there was a big pile-up between the first 4 cars in this race, George Russell's in a good place, isn't he? Currently running in 5th position, some way behind all this. If there is a complete mess up, let's hope it stays clean. But it's exciting stuff with Perez, his mirrors full of the red Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, having to maintain his concentration around a track, and these other slower cars which are now getting blue flags, they will have to back off ahead of them. So Joe gets out of the way, that's good. He does a good job there and stays right out of the way of the leading group, and of course that's rather hurt his attempts to get past Latifi, but he'll join the back of the queue. Latifi will have to do the same thing, have to get out of the way of the leaders, and you never know, Joe might be able to then get onto the back of Latifi again. But they are battling way down the rest of the field. In the points, we've still got Lando Norris currently with that fastest lap that he set just a little while ago. on board with Max Verstappen. How close can he get to the back of Carlos Sainz? And if Sainz makes an attempt to get past Perez, you can bet that Verstappen's going to be perfectly positioned to take advantage if there's any kind of error. Down to the chicane, one of the key areas, but Perez has good pace out of the tunnel. Nice braking, no running wide, holds on for another half a lap for now. Latifi will be getting those blue flags up ahead, and they should be able to get past him pretty rapidly here. Smooth and controlled.
It's going to be 2 more laps to go, and so this will be coming on to the penultimate lap. Bit of a lock-up there, but I think that was by Latifi. Getting a lot of blue flags now. He's really going to have to move out the way.
Yeah, he should do exactly what Joe did last time around. Gets out of the way, down the start-finish straight. He does, as long as Leclerc also gets the chance to go past only just as they get to Saint-Devote. And indeed, it has put Joe right on his tail, as we thought. We're not quite seeing what's going to happen there, but Latifi had got out of the way. Perhaps he should have got out of the way quicker and then had a clear run through the corner. That maybe he should have thought it better, but in the background, I think Joe is still behind him. So he didn't get past, did he?
I think Joe did get past.
Oh, do you? Okay. Sorry, I didn't see that.
No.
All right, that's how close it is.
Yeah, this is down at the hairpin, so he didn't quite make it at that time on the long pull up the hill, but still fighting. So they've basically all dropped behind, but the game is still on.
Yeah, well, it's fun to see that they're still racing hard. The leaders down into the chicane. 1.5 minutes to go. Sergio Perez on target for victory in Monaco if he can hang on in there. Still being chased hard by the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, who finished second here last year. Would love to get that big win, to have his first ever win in Formula One. Doing it in Monaco would be such a fantastic thing.
Perez is backing off to get the lap count down, so it might be 3 including this one.
Hey, it doesn't matter, I'm pushing, all right? No more comms.
So they think Perez is backing down to try and get a fastest lap. Let's see whether that's going to change, but for now it is Lando Norris with the fastest lap. And we are going to see the checker flag out, aren't we? No, we'll see they'll come round, complete the lap. It's going to be interesting to see, because we are less than a minute, and it'll be, so they'll come across the line, it'll be +1 lap, and then they will get the checker flag. So, lap and a half to go, and for the moment it's still Perez from Sainz and Verstappen, Leclerc, George Russell in 5th. He's going to keep his 100% record of finishing in the top 5 at every Grand Prix this year, George Russell. We haven't really seen a lot of him, but that is impressive. He's the only driver, including the major contenders, to have finished top 5 at every race. Into the chicane one more time, and he's only going to have to do it once more. Get it right, and Perez will take victory. You can see the clock ticking away now. Stay off the barriers. It's so easy to make a little mistake, isn't it, Alan, at this point?
It is, but he's been in that rhythm now for a long time, and Sergio Perez is good at finishing races and getting the best out of it. But this one, I think he's driven exceptionally well all weekend, as he now, I think, will go on to his final lap as the clock has clicked down to 0. Yep, the 1 lap board, or 1 lap finger, is out.
We are on the final lap of the Monaco Grand Prix. Sergio Perez with an advantage of less than a second, or around a second, to Carlos Sainz. Now he's beginning to pick up the pace. He is, I think, having a bit of a go maybe at getting fastest lap. Whether it's worth the risk to do that when it's victory that really, really counts, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think he's basically making sure that he's away from any attacks on the last lap. But right now, he's got it in his pocket. As long as he gets a clean run out of this corner and then the final overtaking opportunity, which he has. In fact, Sainz has got to look more in the mirrors at Verstappen behind him, as opposed to trying to overtake Perez up ahead.
Yeah, he's under no threat into the chicane. There are no lockups. It's been clean all the way through for Checo. Great strategy from Red Bull that really worked for him. Got him in front. The race got stopped. He made a good restart, and he has maintained control throughout the rest of the race. For Ferrari, who had the 1-2 on the grid here in Monaco, for Charles Leclerc, who has never finished this race, well, he is going to finish, but not on the podium. Victory in Monaco goes to Sergio Perez for Red Bull. He wins with Carlos Sainz in second, Max Verstappen in third, and Charles Leclerc finishes a Grand Prix at home for the first time, but he will be bitterly disappointed having led the early stages. Russell only just ahead of Lando Norris. That pit stop that Lando Norris did put on the fresh tyres. And Sam, has there been any change to fastest lap?
Yeah, Lando Norris got the fastest lap by some margin. However, Esteban Ocon, he's going to cross the line in 9th position, but he is in reality going to finish in maybe even 12th position after that 5-second time penalty, putting Sebastian Vettel in the points in 10th.
Well done to Perez. First win of the year, his third career victory.
Monaco.
Oh, guys! This is us! Come on! Vamos! Well done, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Checo, you have won Monaco. Unbelievable drive. What a brilliant, brilliant drive.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much to everyone. So happy to be part of this team. Well done, guys. Well done to everyone. Amazing weekend. We just made it a bit harder there in the end.
And he's found a flag as well to enjoy. So well done to Sergio Perez. As I mentioned, the first Mexican to win at Monaco. It's the 11th time that he's done the Monaco Grand Prix, and here he is having taken victory. It's Red Bull's 5th win of the season, of course his first, but Max has won 4.
And P4?
No words. No words. Aye. Season is long, but we cannot do that. We cannot do that.
Yeah, and he's right. They messed up strategy. They got it wrong. And how painful it is, Alan, to do it here at Monaco, which means, you know, it means so much to him, doesn't it? Let's just listen to Sergio again.
Sorry for yesterday, guys. I said I will give you lots of champagne today.
And he found a flag. Nice one.
Yeah, somewhere there was a Mexican flag.
Awesome.
Yeah, so wonder for Perez, but disappointment for Leclerc.
Yeah, exactly, but also it's double disappointment if you think about it, because he was leading and had a technical problem last week in Barcelona, lost the victory. He was leading here, lost the victory. So in that respect, he feels that, I'm sure it's not just this one, but it's also the impact of last week as well that will be weighing a little bit, not just in his mind, but also in Ferrari.
Do you remember that F1 Live question we got earlier on? Like, if Lando Norris changed his tyres, could he catch George Russell? Those two were battling each other across the line. Lando Norris was only 0.2 of a second behind George Russell as the checkered flag dropped. That's pretty impressive from the McLaren driver.
But let's celebrate the moment for Sergio Perez, who has taken victory here in Monaco. Don't collapse now, Checo, but you have done the job. Well done. The 80th ever win for Red Bull, and what a place to do it. It's Red Bull's 6th win at Monaco over the years. It's the venue where they got their first ever podium with David Coulthard back in 2006. It's been a very good event for Red Bull over the years, there's no doubt about it. And it's the first win at Monaco from 3rd on the grid since Lewis Hamilton did it in 2016. So much to be proud of. Adding to his previous tally of 2 victories, the Sakhir Grand Prix in 2020 and then Baku last year, but now the big name, Monaco. Yeah, he's done it. Well done to Checo. And well done to the team for repairing the car after that qualifying accident too. And he was very grateful to them over the radio, which was lovely to hear. I bet there will be lots of champagne. And Helmut Marko, what a good time in terms of thinking about the future to do this, Alan, because Perez's contract is for this year at the moment, but it must be a discussion time going forwards.
Yeah, but I would say from both perspectives it's working, because he's not just the number 2, because he clearly can deliver at situations like this when maybe Max is not quite on full speed, and that is exactly what you want as a team. I wouldn't say there's a conflict between the two of them. They both fight pretty well, they both have got energy, but ultimately they're very, very complementary. So I don't see why he wouldn't be there in 2023 and beyond.
Well, suitably enough, it's David Coulthard to do the interviews.
Sainz, starting with yourself.
Carlos, sorry. I can see a little bit of disappointment on your face. So close, but yet second place. Prix in the cockpit, that was a crazy race.
It was, but I felt like we did everything that we had to do out there. We stayed patient on the wets. We took the right decision to go until the slick. And yeah, a lap car, or a terrible outlap there, stuck behind a lap car, cost me the race win today. So you can understand the frustration, because a clean outlap would have secured me the race win today, but it's how this sport is sometimes.
It is. It's one of the most difficult racetracks to try and predict where you'll come out on track. We heard you very early. In fact, we didn't hear another driver so early say, I want to go straight to slicks. That was a brave call. Was it because you knew that was your opportunity to try and get the win today? Yeah, I knew it from halfway through the race. I started to see the first thing, I started to see the dry line, and I started to realize that it was going to go straight into slicks. I think we did the right call as we were leading the race, basically. Then we pitted for that hard tire. Obviously, hard is never easy on the outlap, but I had to do 12 corners, something like that, behind a lap car. That cost me at least a couple of seconds. That cost me a race win anyway. I'm not going to complain too much. I know that this sport is like that. Checo was unlucky in Jeddah. Obviously, today he did a great race, plus he got a bit lucky with myself, and in this sport it will turn around one day or later. Just a quick word on when we saw Checo there graining on the tyres, that was your opportunity. No point you felt like going all in? I mean, you can see I have quite a lot of graining myself too, especially at the rear, which made the exit of the entry to the tunnel quite difficult to get close and to pass. A couple of times I was nearly really close to launching a move into there, but it was still a bit wet in the inside. Checo was braking quite late, so I think if I would have braked any later, I would have taken him out with me. Well, look, congratulations on the second place in what was a difficult weekend. Just moving on to our third place finisher, Max Verstappen. It seemed that you never quite found the luck or found the routine, the rhythm around this racetrack through qualifying in the race. So finishing in front of Charles Leclerc, you must feel that this is almost as good as a victory.
Yeah, I mean, I did the best I could, of course, after yesterday. Then, once, you got, of course, blocked with that red flag in qualifying, you start forward, and I tried to do the best I can. I think as a team, we did a really good job with the strategy to basically get ahead of the Ferraris. I think as a whole team, we can be very pleased with the Sunday. I mean, it was a very hectic one with the rain and stuff, but I think we executed it well, and I extended my points lead, which I didn't expect last night, so I think that's a positive.
Just explain to the viewers, how difficult is it when you have these delayed starts, these red flag starts, to get back into the rhythm again?
Yeah, especially when it's wet and you haven't really driven around here in the wet, and the tires, of course, are very slippery. I think, it's all about just trying to be very focused. It's easy to make a mistake, of course, but luckily nothing really crazy happened apart from Mick, of course, but I heard he's okay. So, overall, quite a decent day.
Quick line on your teammate taking the victory, his third ever.
Yeah, no, an amazing result for Checo, so very happy for him.
Excellent. Max, congratulations on your podium result. And ladies and gentlemen, it may be only his third Grand Prix victory, but I suspect this is the sweetest feeling of all. Sergio Perez, congratulations on winning in Monaco.
It's a dream come true. I mean, as a driver, you dream of winning here. After your home race, I think there is no other more special weekend to win. So to do it and the way we did it, we just made it a bit harder for ourselves there at the end. But it was just, with the graining I had, to not make any mistake, bring it home, but keeping Carlos behind wasn't easy.
Yeah, you are the tyre whisperer. You're the man that is renowned for being able to make the tyres work. But it looked in the closing stages as if even you couldn't make it work. We saw one lock-up at the restart. And the only other mistake I've seen is when you stood up to wave the Mexican flag, you slipped and fell back into your car.
I wanted to do another race. The graining was just clearing up, so I wanted to go back again on the car. I was super excited. I'm still are. It's a massive day for myself, for my country.
You are now the most successful Mexican driver ever in the history of Mexican Formula One. You can run for president.
I'm just very, very happy. I was running today. Pedro Rodriguez had met, and I'm sure up there he's super proud of what we have achieved together in the sport.
Yeah, you can indeed be very proud. Go and enjoy the champagne.
Thank you.
Well, lovely to hear from Sergio Perez there. And he has now gone ahead of Pedro Rodriguez, his great hero, in terms of race victories in Formula One. Pedro had 2 victories. He's now gone to 3, so he has become the most successful Mexican Grand Prix driver in the history of the sport. And to win Monaco, as David Coulthard pointed out, it means so much to everybody and fully well deserved. And for Red Bull, back-to-back victories at this circuit when they went through a bit of a tough time in the hybrid era early on. They were very rapid here in the pre-hybrid era, but they have brought home first and third, a double podium here today, and they have beaten their big rivals Ferrari. It has opened up the Constructors' Championship lead to some 36 points over Ferrari. And there we can see Carlos just congratulating Sergio. And for Verstappen, it's worked out quite well. His advantage has gone from 6 points over Charles Leclerc to 9 points, so it's not a huge margin. For Perez himself, he is only 15 points away from the championship lead. So we'll just listen in.
Up the hill after turn 1. Back to Williams. In slick, so
yeah, he was just talking about that slow car. It was the Williams that he got caught up in on the exit of the pits. Well, they're ready to come out on the podium in a moment, but yeah, a truly wonderful result. But you do have to feel for Charles Leclerc, who still has not had the opportunity to appear on this podium at his home event. How painful that is going to be for the man who took pole position, who led the early stages of this race. And if Ferrari had got their strategy right, it's quite likely he would have won it. But they just waited a little too long before bringing him into the pits. That cost him such valuable time, and he has ended up 4th. So not only missing out at a podium here in Monaco, but also losing a few more points to his big rival, Max Verstappen. For Red Bull, I suppose one of the issues out of this is how often can they tell Perez to back off for Max when he's only 15 points behind him in the championship? But that's a problem for another day to be talked about. Today, it's all about winning, and it is Sergio Perez who's done it for the first time this year, and he's done it at such a classic venue as well. Brilliant effort by Sergio Perez, beating Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen. And what a day for Christian Horner, who's up on the Monaco podium as well. Massive amount of support all around. And he's going to get some tremendous cheering, I'm sure, as we prepare for the prizes to be handed out. His Serene Highness Albert II, the Sovereign Prince of Monaco, handing out the trophy to the race winner, Sergio Perez. And there'll be photographs spread around the world of that moment for him. Wonderful stuff. Congratulations continue along the podium. Second place trophy is now being handed out by Charlene, the Princess, the Queen of Monaco, Princess Charlene. She is the Princess Charlene of Monaco, wife of the Sovereign Prince. And so second place goes to Carlos Sainz. And third place trophy to Max Verstappen. It might not be the victory he was hoping for, but it is only his second podium here at Monaco. He's been through all sorts of ups and downs here over the years, and he's still got that championship lead, which is what really, really counts to him. And of course, the Constructors' Trophy, which is heading its way down to the far end of the podium, is going to Christian Horner. Fantastic. Stefano Domenicali in the background, the man who now runs Formula One for Liberty. And time for the anthem. Hugely emotional time for Sergio Perez. For Carlos Sainz, 2 years in a row that he's been up there, same for Max Verstappen. And it is a second podium that Perez has ever had, but the first win here. It is always such a special podium here in Monaco, done in a somewhat different way to the other F1 events, but a very, very special time indeed. And for this Red Bull car, well, they have shown such success throughout the course of the season. 5 wins now. Okay, they were fortunate last week when Charles Leclerc had that mechanical problem, and you can say they've been fortunate this weekend, although actually it was down to good strategy. It was down to clever thinking, which Ferrari did not respond to. So it's not luck, it was good teamwork, really, from Red Bull, and particularly from Checo all weekend. That one minor mishap he had in qualifying didn't affect things too much in the end. Sergio Perez celebrates victory in Monaco, a double podium for Red Bull, and Verstappen maintains the World Championship lead after 7 rounds of the 2022 Championship. Well, the champagne everywhere in Monaco is no doubt being opened up, and as Checo told his mechanics, there'll be plenty for them as well, after they did such a fantastic job this weekend to repair his car after the mishap in qualifying, and it has delivered beautifully in this way. All squeezed together for photographs. A very special moment, a moment in Sergio's career that he will always, always value. Wonderful stuff. And, well, the championship battle that we have is still very much on. Ferrari showed the pace here today, but being Monaco and making a mistake on strategy, they missed out. We've still got a great race throughout the season going on between Red Bull and Ferrari, and Perez and Sainz both playing their part today, whereas both of them have had one or two mishaps, Sainz in particular this year. But he came well this weekend, and he's back on the flow with second place. But it was Perez who took victory. Sergio winning in Monaco by 1.1 seconds from Carlos Sainz, with Max Verstappen in third. Charles Leclerc, the pole man, the man who led the early stages, is the one who has missed out. He did finish, though, his first Grand Prix at his home event. George Russell and Lando Norris, the two Brits, 5th and 6th. Russell staying in the top 5. Alonso, Hamilton, Bottas and Vettel completed the top 10 with the penalty for Ocon. That did push Ocon further down the list. It means that Vettel got the point for Aston Martin. Gasly was also ahead of Ocon as a result of that penalty, but sadly the man who struggled in qualifying was just unlucky basically, had pace all weekend. Gasly did not get points, nor did Ricciardo, Stroll or Latifi. Joe had a fun time, but down towards the back, and we had 3 retirements: Albon, Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen. Well, it has been a long afternoon for all of the drivers and teams, but what has it done in terms of the championship? It has extended the lead for Max Verstappen from 6 to 9 points over Charles Leclerc, but that's still very, very close, and it could easily switch around. Perez, though, only 15 points off the lead. Then a bit more of a gap. Look at George Russell there in 4th, still ahead of Carlos Sainz, but Sainz only 1 point behind him now. Hamilton 6th, ahead of Lando Norris, and then Bottas, Ocon and Magnussen complete the top 10. Daniel Ricciardo still on just 11 points, sadly, and Alonso did move up the order a bit as a result of scoring a decent result in 7th place today. Vettel also into the points. Down on the bottom, Nicholas Latifi still failing to score any points this season. And in the Constructors' Championship, it is Red Bull with the commanding lead at the moment, 36 points over Ferrari. Mercedes in 3rd. McLaren doing another good job with Lando to maintain their 4th place ahead of Alfa Romeo, who are just 1 point ahead now of Alpine, who are fighting back after a difficult start. AlphaTauri, Haas, Aston and Williams complete the list. Well, that was Monaco, but as ever in Formula 1, there's plenty more to come. On Friday the 10th of June, first practice from Azerbaijan, the Baku street race, and we will see practice at 3 o'clock local time and 6 o'clock later on. On the Saturday, final practice will be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon local time, qualifying at 6 p.m, and then the race will be at 3 o'clock in Azerbaijan. That'll be the Formula 1 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It is always an eventful one, a street race, but one that overtaking really is achievable with some very high speeds. Thanks to Alan McNish, to Sam Collins and to Will Buxton and everyone else involved in our programme. Goodbye from now.